Chapter 413. Don't tell me you're planning to challenge Tian KZ? Night Fox, you're really good at hiding your strength. Tell me honestly, are you also a powerful warrior? How powerful? Are you a martial saint as well? Yun Xing was overjoyed. Why didn't she think of finding someone to slit Tian KZ's throat? As long as Tian KZ couldn't compete, Yunba wouldn't have anything to do with it. A quarter of Zhou State's purple gold mine would be saved, and the Emperor of Zhou State wouldn't be able to pick on the Yun residents anymore. Yi Baiming wasn't happy. He couldn't help but knock Yun Xing on the head. His eyes were half angry and half dissatisfied. Little wildcat, you're not kind. I've been so loyal to you. Whenever something good happens, you're the first person I think of. You, on the other hand, are the first person I think of when it comes to courting death. Yi Baiming felt sour in his heart. Yun Xing hugged her head and shrank to the side. She stuck out her tongue. You're one of us. Why should I be so polite with you? Besides, you were the one who suggested it. You can't blame me. Who told you to be so heaven-defying? Nothing is difficult in front of you. If you don't make a move, there won't be a suitable candidate. You can't let my second uncle and Deputy Director Zhan do a sneak attack together, right? Yi Baiming was still a little unhappy, but when he heard Yun Xing say one of us, his face instantly brightened. This sentence was quite pleasant to hear. Yi Baiming rubbed his chin. I can't do it myself, but there's a very suitable candidate beside you. He glanced at the life artifact. Tyrant Gold? You wanted to assassinate Tian KZ? That's not very reliable, is it? Yun Xing glanced at the life ritual implement beside her. Tyrant Gold had indeed grown a lot in the past few months, but that was only enough to upgrade it to a mid-level life ritual implement. According to the description in the Magic Weapon Encyclopedia, although an intermediate eternal magic weapon could cast any combat skill or magic spell, it could not fully exert the full strength of the caster. An intermediate eternal artifact could only display 50% of its combat skill or magic power at most. Therefore, Tycoon Jin's strength was enough to wipe out an army of ordinary warriors or mages. However, if he were to meet the true powerhouses of the continent, Tycoon Jin would not be enough. Whether it's reliable or not, I have my own judgment. If you're not worried, you can give it to me. You don't have to worry about this matter. Tian KZ definitely won't appear on the day of the competition. As Yi Baiming spoke, he gave off an indescribably shocking presence. That was absolute confidence. Only a true expert would be able to emit such an aura. Yun Xing glanced at Tycoon Jin, then at Yi Baiming. Yi Baiming's net worth was much higher than hers. Although Tycoon Jin was precious compared to Yi Baiming, Yun Xing quickly made a decision. She promised Yi Baiming that she would give Tycoon Jin to him for 3 days. However, I also have a request. I have helped you so much. You should at least give me something in return. Yi Baiming changed the topic. He stretched out his long arm and smoothly scooped up Yun Xing. Yun Xing was angry, but she could only stare. This was not the first time Yi Baiming had touched her. But she could not do anything to this guy. In terms of strength, Yi Baiming was like an Iron King Kong. Yun Xing suspected that even Puffed Egg would have a headache if it met him. In terms of magic, well, her magic was no match for him. Although Yi Baiming did not use a magic scepter, he could always easily break Yun Xing's magic. Since violent resistance was useless, she might as well lie down and enjoy it. In any case, Yi Baiming was born with good looks and his figure was also quite good. From Yun Xing's angle, Yi Baiming's face was perfect and flawless. Even his eyelashes were black and dense. When they fluttered slightly, it could make one's heart beat faster. It did not feel bad to be in his arms. Yun Xing treated it as if she was hugging a human-shaped pillow. But why was he hugging her for no reason? Yun Xing regained her senses and realized that Yi Baiming's handsome face was getting closer and closer to her. His perfect lips were almost touching her cheek. In her previous life, she had dated Lu Minglang. But because of her personality, she rarely had any intimate actions with Lu Minglang. At most, it was just a kiss. But she had never felt the kind of feeling that Yi Baiming gave her. How old was her body now? The night fox would not suddenly turn into a big bad wolf, right? She did not need to repay him with her body to help him, right? Yun Xing hurriedly turned her face away, her body stiff. Yi Baiming sensed that Yun Xing was acting strangely. A mischievous look flashed across his eyes. His gaze fell on Yun Xing's fair neck that was exposed because of her struggle, as well as the beautiful shape of her white and tender earlobes. His throat tightened slightly. Yi Baiming's heart moved. His thin lips suddenly landed on Yun Xing's ear. His hot breath pressed against Yun Xing's earlobes. Yun Xing only felt as if the base of her ears had been cooked. It was boiling hot, and her hands and feet began to struggle violently. If this continued, she would really be swallowed alive by the fox. Little wild cat, don't move. Otherwise this prince will really swallow you alive. Yi Baiming's lips lightly touched Yun Sheng's earlobes. He understood that Yun Sheng did not have any romantic feelings for him, so he could not be too anxious. Sooner or later the little wild cat would be his. When she grew up he would not let her off so easily. Help this prince refine a batch of weapons that are fused with purple gold, Yi Baiming said slowly. He had noticed that Tyrant Jean was able to refine life magic tools. From the looks of it, not only did the little wild cat know how to refine pills, she was also much more skilled in refining weapons than he had imagined. If she did not use the resources that she had, she would not be a night fox. Most of the purple gold ore that Yi Baiming had on hand had already been roughly refined. The refining skills of those magicians were much worse than Yun Sheng's. Yi Baiming's so-called repayment was to have Yun Sheng refine a batch of purple gold weapons for him. After Yi Baiming said this, Yun Sheng remembered that the biggest use of purple gold ore was not to refine it into purple gold coins, but to refine it into purple gold tools that all the martial artists and magicians on the continent scrambled for. Both Yi Baiming and Yun Sheng had obtained a sizable amount of purple gold ore from the purple gold mine the last time they went to the mine. The two of them had one thing in common: they were not lacking in money. Yun Sheng knew how to refine pills, the little Ci Entong had gradually begun to make a profit, and the business of the Heaven Extermination Hunting Corps was also becoming more and more prosperous. Yi Baiming had a series of organizations under his control, including the Wanlong Gambling House. The two of them were not lacking in money, so after they obtained the purple gold lode, they did not immediately refine it into purple gold coins. Yi Baiming's request was very simple. He would provide the purple gold ore and the corresponding weapons, armor and magic scepters, and Yun Sheng would be responsible for refining the purple gold sacred weapons for him. Chapter 4:14. Yun Sheng thought for a while. This didn't seem too difficult. After she helped the old magician in the magic tower refine a magic scepter, she realized that the elven hellfire had a special effect in refining magic weapons, and pills. Yun Sheng also realized that the more she used the elven hellfire, the higher her ability to control the magic elements. The purity of the elven hellfire would also be higher. Thus, she simply agreed to Yi Baiming's request and escaped from Yi Baiming's bear hug. Yi Baiming was indeed very efficient. After Yun Sheng agreed to his request, he immediately took out 2 storage rings. In one ring, there were 500 high-grade weapons and 500 sets of battle helmets. In the other ring there was a large amount of purple gold ore. In return, he also took away the tycoon gold and told Yun Sheng to wait for news from him. Looking at the pile of purple gold ores in the storage ring, Yun Sheng was overjoyed, but she also felt a sense of imbalance. As expected, Night Fox was not honest. His pile of purple gold ores was far superior to his own in both quality and quantity. Furthermore, from the looks of it, this was only a small portion of the purple gold ores he had obtained. Yun Sheng's lips curled into a sly smile. She immediately called Oriole over. Oriole, go to the hunting troops encampment immediately and bring everyone's weapons and armor over. Also, ask Gufeng to bring the magic scepter over. Since she was going to refine them, she might as well refine them all. Anyway, Night Fox didn't know how much purple gold she needed to refine weapons. Only a fool would not take advantage of such a big spendthrift. Yun Sheng started to get busy. She simply went into seclusion in the magic tower. She first used the elven hellfire to purify the purple gold ore. Then, she fused a portion of the purple gold ore into the various armors, defensive equipment and weapons of the Heaven Expedition hunting troop. Also, the purple gold could be fused into the magic scepter and various magic weapons. After the fusion, Yun Sheng realized that purple gold was indeed the #1 metal ore in the continent. Different grades of weapons and magic tools could fuse with different amounts of purple gold ore. After fusing with purple gold, the sharpness and strength of the weapon would greatly increase. The magic scepter, on the other hand, could improve magic compatibility and allow mages to use the magic scepter better. Take Yun Sheng for example. His armor and weapons had been fused with a lot of purple gold ores from Yun Sheng. Thinking about it now, Yun Sheng still felt pained. However, Yun Sheng's bewitching bone scepter was the one that had absorbed the most purple gold. Just the bewitching bone scepter alone had consumed 1/10 of the purple gold ore in Yi Baiming's storage ring. Yun Sheng also remembered that the Holy Wind King from the Immortal Abode had hinted that her magic scepter was not simple. A small amount of purple gold could unleash a miraculous power. This was enough to increase the overall strength of the Heaven Expedition Hunting Corps by at least 20%. However, Yun Xing did not intend to tell this to Yi Baiming. That brat Yi Baiming had silently swallowed half of the purple gold or vein. Just thinking about this made Yun Xing's teeth itch. The time in the magic tower was slow and long. When Yun Xing was tired, she would meditate and use the magic power in the magic tower to recover her magic power. The jade marrow technique in her body was also slowly increasing unknowingly. At the same time, Yi Baiming had already brought Tycoon Gold back to his residence. Tycoon Gold was a magic weapon. It did not have the ability to think like a human. Its master's thoughts were everything. Before Yun Xing left, she only told Tycoon Gold to follow Yi Baiming. In these few days since Yi Baiming was her, she would do whatever he wanted. Yi Baiming changed into a set of training clothes and brought Tycoon Gold to the private training room he built in his courtyard. The benefits of the inner pavilion of Wuxia Everlasting Martial School were much better than the outer pavilion. As the #1 disciple of Wuxia Everlasting Martial School, Yi Baiming could build a training room that was suitable for him according to his needs. When Tycoon Gold walked into the training room, his feet were obviously sluggish. As a magic weapon of life, he could already feel the uniqueness of this training room. The training room was not big. It was about 10 square meters in size. It was square and bare without any furnishings. However, in the four corners of the room, there were several magic arrays that emitted magic power. Tycoon Gold was a magic weapon of life. He could feel the changes in his surroundings. He realized that after he entered the training room, his movements became sluggish. Those magic arrays were very special. They made everyone who entered the training room feel as if they were carrying a 1,000-pound stone lion. It was difficult for them to move. However, Yi Baiming looked normal. He must have been training in such an environment for a long time and was already used to the uniqueness of this place. I don't care how many times you've won in Hunter's Citadel, but I can tell you that all the battle skills and magic you've learned are just trash that looks good on the surface but is useless. They're trash and should be thrown away. Yi Baiming changed his appearance. He exuded a terrifying aura from head to toe. The Dark North King in the day had long disappeared. Or rather, this was his true appearance. Tycoon Gold understood. Even its master Yun Xing had never spoken to it in such a tone. After spending some time with Zhou Quan, it could probably understand the human language. Tycoon Gold was displeased that someone who was not its master would speak to it in such a tone. Not convinced? Then come at me. I will beat you until you are convinced. Therefore, Yi Baiming gathered his qi. A gust of fighting energy rose from his palms. The fighting energy was quickly compressed and covered his palms. It was as if Yi Baiming was wearing a pair of boxing gloves that were impervious to fire and water. Yi Baiming's arms shook. Fighting energy swirled around him. He threw a punch. The fighting energy was extremely powerful. Ah! A gust of fighting energy suddenly erupted from his body. The air seemed to be torn apart. With a loud bang, a black ball of fighting energy appeared in his hands. That ball of fighting energy was very special. It was pitch black like a black hole. It could instantly swallow all the fighting energy and magic elements around it. As soon as it appeared, it exuded a terrifying destructive power. It was like a black hole in the universe. Any light, even the stars, would be swallowed as soon as it got close. Yi Baiming leaped and turned into a black shadow. In a flash, he was already beside Tycoon Gold. The black ball of fighting energy in his hands threw Tycoon Gold away. Tycoon Gold was thrown away. It was made of purple gold ore. Any attack would not be fatal to it. But this time it struggled to get up. There was a hole in its chest. That hole could not be repaired in a short period of time. What made Tycoon Gold even more confused was that it could not imitate the opponent's attack. Strong. This man was very strong. Even if it did not have the ability to think like a human, Tycoon Gold still realized this point. Remember, this is the first battle skill that you cannot learn. Its name is Black Qilin Flame. You don't need to learn it. I just want to tell you, don't try to disobey me. Those who disobey me, even if it is a life instrument, I can destroy you in an instant. In the next day and night, you have to learn all the other fighting skills that I have taught you. In the future, they will be the only way for you to protect your little wild cat. We will call them killing skills for the time being. Yi Baiming said coldly. At this moment, he was like a supreme killing god who looked down on the world. Chapter 4:15. Very good. Little Wildcat's life magic tool was even stronger than he had imagined. Yi Baiming didn't just want to train Tyrant Jean to kill Tian Kezi. He also wanted to nurture the continent's top killing tool. He had always wanted to find a true retainer for Yun Xing. This retainer would protect Yun Sheng when he wasn't around. However, Yi Baiming hadn't found a suitable candidate. Tyrant Jin's appearance allowed him to find the best replacement for his retainer. One day and night passed. On this night, the wind was strong. Tian Kezi was cultivating in later Qin's embassy. In another day he would be competing with Yun Ba. Although Yun Ba was heavily poisoned and would most likely lose, Tian Kezi didn't dare to lower his guard. He was also a martial sage, but he was still lacking compared to Yun Ba. Tian Kezi was a person who was extremely greedy for fame and fortune. Unlike Yun Ba, who was wholeheartedly loyal to Zhou state, Tian Kezi served later Qin's imperial family not only because he coveted power, but also because he wanted to rely on the imperial family to obtain better cultivation resources. He had become famous later than Yun Ba, and he didn't have Yun Ba's talent as a general. Therefore, in terms of reputation he would always lose to Yun Ba. He had always wanted to replace Yun Ba and become Zhou state's and later Qin's #1 martial sage. Unfortunately, he had always been inferior to Yun Ba. Apart from the competition 8 years ago when he had taken advantage of Yun Ba's perilous state to force a draw, he had been defeated by Yun Ba without exception in all their previous encounters. Yun Ba wasn't willing to publicize these matters, so the outside world had never known. Yun Ba, this time I will definitely defeat you. From now on, Zhou state, later Qin, and even the entire continent, I will be the one and only martial sage. Tian Kezi's heart couldn't help but sway when he thought of the future. Suddenly, a dark shadow flitted past the door. Tian Kezi's gaze darkened. Someone had actually entered the embassy without him noticing? Tian Kezi didn't hesitate. He immediately got up and rushed out. Later Qin's embassy, 2 figures dashed out. It was already around midnight. Within the Jade capital, not a sound could be heard. Only the barking of dogs could be heard from the narrow alleys. The more Tian Kezi followed, the more surprised he became. The figure in front of him had a strange movement technique. Even with his cultivation, he was unable to catch up to the other party in a short time. Could it be Yun Ba? Within Jade capital, the only one who could match up to him in terms of skills was Yun Ba. But on second thought, Yun Ba's competition was tomorrow, so there was no way he would be so sneaky. The two of them quickly flew past the walls of the Jade capital. A bright moon hung in the sky. After a few moments, the black shadow in front finally stopped. Tian Kezi looked around. They were already in the outskirts, surrounded by wild grass. A bright moon hung in the sky, and the person in front finally turned around. It slowly removed the cloak that covered its face. When he saw the person's face, Tian Kezi was slightly shocked. What was that? What he saw was not a person. Tian Kezi felt his hands and feet turn cold. It was a human-shaped golden man. Under the bright moonlight, the golden man's body emitted a dazzling golden light. It was the purest golden light. It was even purer than the purest purple gold coins. The golden man's body was comparable to a human's. Apart from its facial features, it had arms and legs. It looked almost like a human. If a normal person saw such a monster, their first thought would be shock. But Tian Kezi was the martial saint of later Qin. He quickly recognized that the golden man in front of him was not an ordinary object. It was an artifact with life. An artifact of life. Tian Kezi's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. Let's go. Tian Kezi's expression changed. He moved quickly and was about to escape. He wasn't afraid of the artifact of life. What he was truly afraid of was the owner of the artifact. The appearance of an artifact of life meant that it was very likely that the person behind it was an expert on the level of the Master Summoner or even Emperor Zhao. Only such an expert could have a special artifact refining method to refine such a heaven-defying artifact of life. Suddenly, 5 or 6 dazzling flames appeared in the sky. The flames were unusual. They were as muddy as mud and were not the usual red flames. The flames turned into 5 or 6 raging flood dragons, blocking Tian Kezi's retreat in all directions. Running? In a place where the moonlight couldn't reach, a tall figure stood. The figure stood with his back facing Tian Kezi. His gray eyes were stained with blood and revealed a trace of ferocity. Tian Kezi, you can't escape. Tian Kezi couldn't see the figure's appearance clearly. He could only see the black and red dragons around him staring at him. The moon in the sky disappeared. The sound of the wind and the chirping of the insects seemed to have frozen. Tian Kezi felt as if he was trapped in a quagmire. His movements were no longer agile. Tian Kezi had always thought highly of himself. In his opinion, he was undoubtedly the most powerful martial artist on the continent. But at this moment he felt as small as a speck of dust in front of that figure. He suddenly realized the true nature of those flood dragons. That was Dark magic. Kill him. The man's voice was clear and loud. In the dark night, it was like a stone falling into a lake. His voice spread out. Tycoon Jin exploded with astonishing power in an instant. Around it, rings of golden do chi shot out like exploding flames. Boom. Tian Kz and Tycoon Jin instantly clashed. Half an hour later, Tian Kz was panting heavily. He looked at the artifact of life not far away with hatred. What kind of monster was that? Its speed, its attack power, and its imitation ability. How could such a monster appear in Zhou State? Who are you people? Why do you want to kill me? Tian Kz was sure that whether it was the dark magic or this artifact of life, they were not something the residents of Yun could possess. Too slow. You're not enough to protect her. The man's voice was like the seduction from the depths of the dark night. It was low, lazy, noble, and full of killing intent. When it heard the man's voice, Tycoon Jin's body emitted a violent killing intent. In the past day and night of training, the man had used such words to provoke it every time. The man had repeatedly instilled the concept into it. It was the artifact of life and its existence was to kill. As if it was hypnotized, Tycoon Jin only had one thought in its mind. Protect its master Yun Sheng, and kill all those who threaten Yun Sheng's life. Tycoon Jin suddenly leaped into the air. His figure merged with the jade-round moon in the sky. The moon was no longer bright and flawless. It was a bloody red, filled with killing intent and violence. A golden dot rose slowly, like a firework that suddenly bloomed under the moon. Chapter 416. The sun had just risen in the Zhou State's Marshal Saint General's manor. You said that Tian Kz ran away before the battle. Yun Ba had heard this shocking news early in the morning. For today's competition, Yun Ba had even brought out the armor he used on the battlefield back then. He polished it until it shone brightly in preparation for the big battle with Tian Kz, blinding that little thief's dog eyes. Who knew that just as Yun Ba was about to step out of the Marshal Saint General's manor and valiantly prepare for the competition, a piece of news that shocked the entire Yujing city spread. The entire Yujing city was shaken. Tian Kz had run away before the battle. No, to be more precise, Tian Kz had gone missing. He had indeed gone missing. The Dark Prince's men had searched the entire Later Qin embassy. They were just short of digging 3 feet into the ground, but they still couldn't find Tian Kz. The dignified Later Qin Marshal Saint had actually disappeared the night before the battle. There were no letters, no sudden illness, and no news. Tian Kz had disappeared without a word. The only explanation was that he was worried that he couldn't beat Yun Ba, so he ran away before the battle. Otherwise, how could such an adult and a martial saint at that disappear just like that? Yun Ba first cursed a few times but then he laughed. Now that Tian Kz had disappeared, all the problems were no longer a problem. Running away before the battle was the biggest joke in the world. The Dark Prince of Later Qin wouldn't have the face to ask for a quarter of the purple gold mine. Needless to say, the Later Qin and Tang Yuan alliance could all go to hell. It was said that after the Later Qin soldiers at the border received this news, their morale plummeted. All of them cursed Tian Kz's father and mother, cursing all 18 generations of his ancestors. Tian Kz's family in Later Qin was also unable to recover from this setback. Compared to Later Qin, the Tang Yuan kingdom's reaction was also very subtle. Tang Yuan's second prince, Li Xiao, also received this bizarre news in the shortest time possible. Li Xiao was good at scheming. In Zhou State, he had missed out on the purple gold mine and had always held a grudge in his heart. The other party was also powerful, snatching half of his purple gold mine, but no matter how hard he searched, he could not find any clues. Li Xiao could only take revenge on Zhou State. The alliance between Later Qin and Tang Yuan had been secretly ordered by Li Xiao, and he'd been the one to pass the bottle of amniotic fluid to Xuanwu Ji. The entire plan was flawless. Li Xiao had even made meticulous preparations. As soon as Yun Ba was defeated, he would immediately invade Zhou State. Who knew that at this critical juncture Tian Kz actually disappeared? If he was alive he wanted to see him. If he was dead he wanted to see his corpse. Later Qin, what did they do? Li Xiao was still unwilling to retreat. The hidden crown prince has already ordered the army to retreat 100 li. Everything will be done to find Marshal Saint Tian Kz, the spy reported. We will also bide our time for now. Li Xiao gave the order and waited for news from Jade Capital. No one was happier than the Emperor of Zhou State when Tian Kz went missing. The Emperor of Zhou State was overjoyed and secretly delighted. This was undoubtedly the best result. Later Qin had lost a lot of face. It was said that the hidden crown prince of later Qin killed two of Tian Kzi's attendants in a fit of anger. However, what everyone didn't know was that there was another power that had obtained even greater benefits. That power was truly silent and had made a fortune. That was the Wanlong gambling house. In the previous competition between Tian Kz and Yun Ba, because both of them were martial saints, roughly half of the people bet on each side. Who knew that after Tian Kz made such a scene, no one won or lost, and all the bets went to the Wandong gambling house. The gamblers cursed at the Wandong gambling house, but they could only swallow their anger. When Yun Sheng received the news, she had just left the magic tower. She looked calm and collected, but in her heart she couldn't wait to find Yi Baiming and Tycoon Jean, who she hadn't seen for a few days. What caught Yun Sheng's attention was that Tycoon Jean had changed a lot. Looking at its limbs carefully, it was very different from when Yun Sheng had just refined it. Every inch of its body was tougher and more powerful. The originally dazzling purple-gold color had also turned red. That was because it was stained with blood. In just one day and night, Tycoon Jean, who was originally a middle-level life artifact, had reached the peak of the middle level. It could break through to the high level at any time, and could display more than 50% of the power of the battle skills and magic that it imitated. The current Tycoon Jean could be called a real war artifact. Yun Sheng couldn't help but feel happy when she saw this. Night Fox was quite reliable. Tian Kz really disappeared, but she was soon depressed again. I made a mistake. I should have gone to the Wandong gambling house to bet on a draw before the competition. That way I would have made a fortune. The Wandong gambling house is really lucky. The owner of the gambling house has really made a fortune this time. Oh well, I've also secretly scooped up some purple gold from Night Fox. It can be considered a consolation prize, Yun Sheng thought to herself. With Tian Quozi's disappearance, all of the gambling money went to the Wandong gambling house. A rough calculation showed that the Wandong gambling house had earned tens of millions of gold coins. If Yun Sheng knew that the person behind Wandong gambling house was Yi Baiming, she would probably vomit 3 liters of blood. Reality proved that a fox was a fox. It wouldn't lose out in anything. In the next few days, the entire Jade capital was discussing Tian Kz's disappearance. Yun Sheng distributed a portion of the purple gold sacred weapons that she had refined to the hunting corps. At a certain place in Wandong gambling house, Yun Sheng, Qi and the others had come to participate in the stone gambling banquet. Long Hua and the other stewards of Wandong gambling house stood to one side. The 4 stewards of Wandong gambling house were Long Hua, Long Shui, Long Feng and Long Tuesday. The 4 of them were 3 men and 1 woman. Their appearances and ages were all different. They rarely appeared at Wandong gambling house at the same time, but today they were all gathered together. Yi Baiming sat alone. Long Hua was the oldest of the 4. He was more than 10 years older than Yi Baiming, but in front of him, the 4 of them were all respectful and reverent. Yi Baiming was a natural-born king. This was something that the 4 of them already understood when he left the cold palace and appeared in front of them a few years ago. There was a person standing beside him. His back was somewhat familiar, but his entire body was like the people of Bloody Hand Tycoon. He was tightly wrapped in a set of fish scale armor, and there wasn't a single gap from head to toe. No one would have expected that the former martial saint of later Qin would become like this overnight, a puppet without any thoughts of his own. His empty eyes and silent appearance showed that he had long forgotten the fact that he was once Tian Kz. Master, the gambling house has made a lot of profit this time. The total income is 33 million gold coins. Long Hua acted as if he didn't see the extra person at all. He had followed Yi Baiming for so long and understood many things. He didn't ask what he shouldn't. Allocate 5 million gold coins to recruit people and expand the Netherworld Guard. Yi Baiming flipped through the account book and took out a storage ring. Long Hua took the storage ring and looked at the things inside. He couldn't help but be shocked. In a place like Wandong gambling house there were all kinds of people. Long Hua's eyesight was also much better than the average person's. When he saw the weapons in the storage ring he couldn't help but be shocked. These weren't ordinary weapons. They were all saint-level weapons fused with part of purple gold. Where did Master get such a large batch of violet gold weapons? Chapter 417. Master, there's something I don't understand. Long Shui, one of the 4 Long men, walked out. Long Shui was the only woman among the 4 of them. She was also the youngest. She was about 18 or 19 years old. She had a graceful figure and a pair of watery eyes that were full of emotions. The 4 people of Wanlong gambling house were 4 very good magicians. Among them, Long Hua and Long Tu were old people who had served Empress Li, Long Feng and Long Shui were later discovered by Yi Baiming and joined Wanlong gambling house. The outside world thought that Yi Baiming had been secluded in the cold palace for many years. In fact, he had already been moving around the mainland when he was still blind. But at that time, his identity was only the owner of Wanlong gambling house. Long Shui was the latest to join. Her original name was Shui Yuran. She was born in a scholarly family. But because her family's fortune declined, she was bought into a brothel. At that time she was only 10 years old, but she was already very intelligent. She was not willing to be buried in a brothel for the rest of her life. So she escaped when a guest was drunk. Coincidentally, when Yi Baiming and Long Huo went out to do something, they happened to meet Shui Yuran, who was being chased by a brothel. So they saved her. Yi Baiming checked and found that Shui Yuran was actually a genius in learning magic. So he simply took her in and changed her name to Long Shui. Until now, Long Shui still remembered how she looked when she first met Yi Baiming. It was a snowy day. She was wearing the clothes of a prostitute and stumbled all the way out of the brothel. Behind her, the people of the brothel were shouting and cursing ferociously. It was like the sound of a demon urging her to die. She only knew to keep running forward. Until she fell to the ground and cold ice shards hit her face. Just when she thought that she would never have the chance to get rid of the group of demons behind her, two people appeared in front of her. Under Grey Fox's command, there was a boy who was so handsome that it made people fall into a trance. Beside him was a tall man. The boy's eyes were dim, but the aura on his body was so soul-stirring. Facing the people of the brothel, the boy only said one word, "Kill." That was clearly a child, but when that word was spat out from that mouth that was as thin as a blade, it made one's hair stand on end. Even a true emperor would not be able to maintain his composure in the face of an army of 10,000. The moment Long Huo made a move, he killed the head of the brothel. "From now on you will be called Long Shui. I am your master Yi Baiming." The boy's words were like a brand that was branded in Shui Yuran's heart. That was the only time Long Shui had ever heard Yi Baiming's name. Since then she could only call him master. Long Shui only found out about Yi Baiming's true identity a year later. In her mind, her master, who was born with the temperament of a royal family, had an illustrious background. He was the former crown prince of Zhou state. After learning about this, Long Shui was very indignant. She had seen Yi Bailin, the crown prince of Zhou state, who was a lecherous, cowardly, and incompetent mediocre man. Such a person actually replaced her noble master in her mind and became the crown prince of Zhou state. Long Shui believed that her master would never succumb to such a person. Sure enough, in the next few years she saw her master secretly cultivating forces. He was nominally an idle prince, but in fact he had an army that could not be underestimated. This time Long Shui met Yi Baiming again after several years. She was pleasantly surprised to find that her master's eyes had recovered. Her master, who was originally as handsome as a god, now looked as flawless as a beautiful jade. Looking at Yi Baiming, Long Shui could not help but be infatuated. Her memory suddenly stopped. Long Shui. Long Huo looked at Long Shui with dissatisfaction. She had obviously dressed up carefully today. Her beautiful face looked a little more enchanting. Long Shui collected her thoughts and looked at her master with half infatuation. "It's fine. Long Shui, do you want to ask me why I don't take advantage of this competition to weaken Zhou state's power and force the crown prince to abdicate?" Yi Baiming did not take Long Shui's rudeness to heart. "Yes, according to master's plan these years, isn't it to make the emperor of Zhou state a mere figurehead? Within Zhou state there are few martial practitioners. The residence of Yun is already the last support of Zhou state. If Yun Ba dies this time, won't we have a better chance?" Although 10 million imperial gold coins was a considerable amount, it was nothing compared to the Wanlong gambling house, which made hundreds of thousands of gold coins a day. Yun Ba is now poisoned. He can no longer support the residents of Yun. As for Yun Songlong, when he finds out the truth of what happened back then, he will definitely no longer be loyal to the emperor of Zhou state. Yi Baiming muttered. Indeed, he had once wanted to use this opportunity to cut off Yun Ba, who was like the emperor of Zhou state's right-hand man. He had already started to make meticulous plans to weaken the residents of Yun several years ago. However, a small episode had appeared in the middle of this, forcing him to stop his plans. Yun Sheng, because he did not want her to be sad, he had stopped this plan. Fortunately, although there had been some changes to the plan, the final goal had been achieved. If he didn't guess wrong, the real crisis had just erupted. Within Yujing City there was a surging undercurrent. The situation of some rejoicing and some worrying had yet to be broken. In the main temple of the Continental Law Temple, Elder Judge Jiyu was meditating as usual. Suddenly, his eyebrows twitched. An ominous feeling in his heart grew stronger. Jiyu immediately stopped meditating. With a teleportation, he was already standing in front of the heavenly mandate mirror. He looked at the mirror and found that there was a crack on the heaven's mandate mirror, which was originally intact. The crack was very small, but it was especially glaring on the mirror. The heavenly mandate mirror had broken. Could it be that something had happened to the situation on the continent? Jiyu hurriedly performed a divination. Looking at the divination, his expression became even more gloomy. Elder Judge Ming, there's news from the Great Zhou dynasty. The martial sages of the Great Zhou dynasty and the later Qin dynasty are dueling. A boy from the temple ran in and handed a letter to Jiyu. Jiyu suppressed the unhappiness in his heart and opened the letter. The letter was sent by his old friend, Wendagua, the great master of the Medicine Emperor Pavilion. The ink on the letter was still wet. The few lines were especially glaring. Tian Quozi is missing, Yunba is alive. Jiyu's originally calm expression changed drastically at this moment. There was only one thought in his mind right now, and that was to immediately contact Xiao Wenshu. The heavenly mandate mirror's predictions were never wrong. Yunba's fate had been a bloody disaster the last time he performed a divination. But this time there was a glimmer of hope. Fate could not be changed. If there really was a change, there could only be one reason. Someone had leaked the heavenly secrets. Jiyu immediately drew a light magic array. Soon, Xiao Wenshu appeared on the other side of the array. Chapter 418. Wenshu, what's going on here? Jiyu's expression was very grave. He had been very proud of this disciple of his for many years. He had never questioned Xiao Wenshu with such a serious tone before. Xiao Wenshu wasn't too surprised by his master's anger. This morning, when he learned that Tian Kezi had gone missing and that the martial sage competition had been forced to stop, he was also somewhat surprised. Although he had long known that Yunba had been poisoned by a strange poison, he didn't expect that it would be the later Qin that would retreat in the end. After all, Yunba's character was one that would never retreat even in death. Even if he knew that he was inferior to Tian Kezi, he would never give up. Being firm was easy to break. This was Yunba's greatest taboo in this bloody disaster. Xiao Wenshu had also performed a divination for Tian Kezi. The divination showed that it was a mystery divination. This divination was neither a death divination nor a death divination. Xiao Wenshu had guessed that Yun Xing wouldn't just sit and wait for death. However, if he said that Tian Kezi's disappearance had something to do with Yun Xing, it would be too much of a compliment to Yun Xing. No matter what, she was only a master sorcerer. The current her was as insignificant as an ant in front of an expert like Tian Kezi. Master, this disciple also doesn't know what happened. Xiao Wenshu's expression was unchanged. He had only warned Yun Xing, but didn't tell Yun Xing how to avoid this bloody disaster. If one really wanted to calculate, it could only be said that Yunba's life wasn't meant to end this time. There was still a chance for him to survive. Seeing that Xiao Wenshu wasn't acting strangely, Jiyu's anger subsided a little. At least, he knew that Xiao Wenshu wasn't involved in this matter. In Wendagua's letter, he had also mentioned that he had met a disguised Xiao Wenshu in the medical center of the little girl from the Yun family. He had thought that, it couldn't be. Xiao Wenshu was brought up by him. This child had always been cold and detached. How could a mere little girl from the Yun family make him do something as absurd as sacrificing his own lifespan and revealing the secrets of heaven? Jiyu heaved a sigh of relief. Pay close attention to Tian Kezi's whereabouts. Pay attention to Duguxiu's actions later, Qin. That person is not a good person. This time he had lost a martial saint in the Great Zhou dynasty for no reason. He would definitely be unwilling to do so. Once this matter is settled, you can return to the temple. Disciple obeys. After saying that, the magic power in the magic formation dissipated, and Jiyu's voice and figure disappeared. Xiao Wenshu was in deep thought. Umo rushed in. Young Arbiter Ming, something bad has happened. Why are you so flustered? Xiao Wenshu saw that the one who entered was Umo. Looking at his expression, he couldn't help but be slightly startled. Solitary rain wasn't solitary rain. He didn't speak much. Something big must have happened to move him. Old General Yun is heavily injured. We don't know if he's still alive. The same words were also sent to Wushuan Limitless Hall. Hua! The porcelain medicine bottle in Yun Sheng's hand fell to the ground and shattered into several pieces in an instant. Yun Ba was heavily injured and bleeding profusely. How could this be? Didn't Tian Xuzi already disappear? When Yun Sheng heard the news, she felt as if she had been struck in the chest. Blood was thicker than water. No matter how much she hated Yun Ba, she couldn't deny that she was a descendant of the Yun family. Today, the Crown Prince of Later Qin entered the palace to apologize on behalf of Later Qin's Tian Xuzi. The emperor also invited old General Yun into the palace. Who would have thought that during the palace banquet, the Crown Prince of Later Qin, Du Guxiu, would actually challenge old General Yun to a duel? Old General Yun underestimated his opponent. When Uncle Yun heard the news, he immediately rushed over to tell Yun Sheng. Yun Ba's body was also poisoned by the amniotic fluid of the demonic beasts. Once he was injured, his blood would flow in reverse and he would definitely bleed profusely. Although Yun Ba knew this, both he and the imperial capital of Zhou state thought that the crown prince, Du Guxiu, was only a youth who wasn't even 20 years old. Even if his strength was extraordinary, it was impossible for him to hurt Yun Ba. Who would have thought that the result of the duel would give everyone a huge shock? After hearing Uncle Yun's words, Yun Sheng didn't have time to think anymore. She immediately packed up her medical kit. Because Yun Ba was injured in the palace, she could only go to the imperial palace. Once they reached the palace gates, the anxious Yun Sheng and Uncle Yun were stopped by the imperial guards outside the palace. The imperial palace is a restricted area. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter. The two imperial guards didn't care whether they were from the Yun residence or not. After discovering that Yun Sheng and Uncle Yun didn't have a token to enter the palace, they stopped them outside the palace gates. Brothers, we are from the Yun residence. Old General Yun is seriously injured and this is a doctor. Please let us pass. Uncle Yun hurriedly took out some silver coins, wanting to bribe the guards. Old General Yun has already been treated by Medicine Emperor Pavilion's Wendagua. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter. The two imperial guards still refused to let them pass. When Yun Sheng heard that Wendagua had also come, she knew that Yun Ba was most likely dead. Otherwise, why would Wendagua, who hadn't left the Medicine Emperor Pavilion for many years, come so easily? Let them in. This is old General Yun's granddaughter. Yi Baiming walked out of the palace. When he saw Yun Sheng, a trace of guilt flashed across his eyes. Yi Baiming was also present at the palace banquet today. He saw the entire process of Yun Ba being injured. However, he wasn't able to stop this from happening. Hearing that the other party was Yun Ba's granddaughter, the two imperial guards let them pass. The corridors of the palace twisted and turned as Yun Sheng hurried along. What is going on? How can Du Guxiu be so powerful? Yun Sheng had also seen Du Guxiu's skills. He wasn't weak and shouldn't be inferior to Bu Jiuxiao. However, compared to second uncle Yun Songlong, he was still a distance away, not to mention Yun Ba. Even if Yun Ba was cautious of strange poisons, his strength wasn't something that Du Guxiu could compare to. You'll know when you go in. Yi Baiming frowned. When he saw that scene, he was also very surprised. He didn't expect the hidden crown prince of Later Qin to be so powerful. Yun Sheng hurriedly entered a palace. Outside the palace stood several people. Yun Songlong was also among them. At the outermost circle stood Du Guxiu, Xian Wuji, and the others. In the middle circle stood the Emperor of Zhou State, Empress Qi, the Crown Prince, Chen Lianer, and the others. In the innermost circle, around the bed, were the people of the Medicine Emperor Pavilion. When Du Guxiu saw Yun Sheng, his eyes flashed, revealing a smug and mocking smile. When he saw Yun Sheng, his eyes shone brightly as if he had seen his prey. He realized that when Yun Sheng was angry, she looked more beautiful than usual. Usually she was like a lily in the morning, but now she was like a thorny rose, exuding a different kind of beauty. Du Guxiu's gaze was too explicit. When Yun Sheng saw Du Guxiu, she felt as disgusted as if she had swallowed a fly. She noticed that Du Guxiu's right sleeve was stained with blood. Needless to say, she knew that it was Yun Ba's blood. Chapter 419. An eye for an eye. Du Guxiu, if she had known that this would happen today, she would not have saved him at Daoi Mountain. Yun Sheng suppressed the anger in her heart and was about to walk in. Stop. How dare you not greet His Majesty the Empress and the Crown Prince? Chen Lianer was furious when she saw Yun Sheng and Yi Baiming enter together, and her words were filled with sarcasm. A human life is more important than the heavens. Get lost. Yun Sheng was also furious. Her gaze sharpened and she quickened her steps, about to barge in. What a rude wild girl. She's just a doctor and she dares to be so impudent in the palace. Empress Qi was also displeased. Let her in. Old General Yun wants to see her. Unexpectedly, the one who spoke up to help Yun Sheng was Wendaguashu. Dagwa walked out with his hands behind his back. Daguashu, who was usually dressed neatly, looked exhausted today. His body was also stained with large patches of blood. He looked very helpless. He had already tried everything he could think of. Daguashu had already rushed here for an hour. He also did not expect that Yunba would be so severely injured. Yunxing walked in and saw bloody clothes all over the floor. There were also a few basins filled with blood around. After taking a few more steps, Yunxing saw Yunba on the bed. As a doctor in both her lives, Yunxing had seen serious injuries before. However, she had never seen such a tragic situation like today. Her entire body was ice cold. In her mind, she kept replaying the words that she had said. After the blood is poisoned by the amniotic fluid of magical beasts, once it comes into contact with a wound, the blood will not stop flowing until the person dies of blood loss. Yunba's originally tall and majestic body was now like a piece of paper that could collapse at any time. There was a fist-sized hole in the right side of his chest. Dugushio. Yunxing only felt that her teeth were about to be ground into pieces. Dugushio had actually used his fist to pierce through Yunba's chest. Yunxing didn't know how he did it, but Yunba, whose body had been pierced, was extremely weak. The large amount of blood loss caused his martial sage body to be unable to hold on any longer. However, it was also thanks to the stubbornness of his battered body that Yunba had been able to hold on until now. Yunba only had one thought the moment he was struck down. This time he had really failed miserably. That little girl would probably look down on her grandfather even more. Cough, cough. Yunba's expression could no longer be described as ugly. He raised his hand with difficulty. When he heard Yunsheng's voice just now, his originally blurry consciousness had a moment of clarity. He begged Daguashu to let Yunsheng in. Even if he was mocked, he wanted to hear Yunsheng call him grandpa before he died. Yunsheng walked to the side of the bed and immediately took out her 4 seasons glazed needles. Cough, cough. Don't waste your energy. Old man, one has already inserted many needles into my body. It can't be stopped. Daguashu is Daguashu, I am me. After a moment of panic, Yunsheng quickly regained her composure. Little girl, don't force yourself. Even the light magic of the Dharma temple can't heal his injuries. Daguashu had some sympathy for Yunsheng, but after hearing Yunsheng's words, his sympathy immediately disappeared. If not for his friendship with Yunba, he wouldn't have entered the palace at all. Even Daguashu was at his wit's end when he saw the injuries on Yunba's body. He had examined Yunba and found that his internal organs had been shattered in many places. His blood couldn't be stopped with needles either. The best hemostatic agent was immediately washed away by the blood when applied. He had been in the medical world all his life, but he had never seen such serious injuries. Perhaps I can help. Xiao Wenshu had also rushed to the palace. He didn't know why he had rushed over, but he knew that Yunxing would definitely need his help at this time. His master's earlier words had already been thrown to the back of Xiao Wenshu's mind. His arrival came as a surprise to Yunxing. But when she thought about it, Xiao Wenshu had the eye of the heavens. If he could predict that Yunba would face a bloody calamity, he must have also predicted that something like this would happen today. Saving a life was more important. Yunxing couldn't care about anything else. Without another word, she pulled Xiao Wenshu and walked inside. When the two of them held hands, Yi Baiming couldn't help but frown. Beside him, Dugushio's eyes also darkened. Old General's injuries are very serious. I'm afraid that light magic can only stop his bleeding and treat his external injuries. However, his internal injuries are very serious. I can't use light magic to treat his internal and external injuries at the same time. Unless someone can use magic to stop the bleeding and stitch up his broken internal organs at the same time. Xiao Wenshu looked at the bloodstains on the ground and couldn't help but frown. Looking at Yunba's condition, he more or less understood why even when Dagwa couldn't do anything about old General Yun's injuries. The amniotic fluid of magical beasts was very poisonous. He didn't have the spring of life and couldn't purify Yunba's blood. Therefore, if he wanted to stop the bleeding, he could only use light magic to stop the bleeding on the surface. However, there was no way to directly heal the internal organs. Under such circumstances, even if Yunba managed to stop the bleeding, he would very likely die from internal bleeding. Yunba's chest was rising and falling more and more slowly. He was also a tough guy. At this moment he actually didn't faint and was still holding on, glaring at Yunsheng and Xiao Wenshu. You only need to stop the bleeding. I will stitch up the internal organs. Yunsheng licked her dry lips. Her small action stunned Xiao Wenshu, who turned his face away. No way. His internal organs are injured in many places. Even if you stitch them up, it will be too late. Your needle skills can't be faster than my magic. Xiao Wenshu still shook his head. I said it can be done. You only need to stop the bleeding. Yun Sheng's voice suddenly became louder. Even Yun Ba, who was lying on the sickbed, was shocked by Yun Sheng's words. Everyone in the hall was stunned by Yun Sheng's words. No one had ever spoken to Xiao Wenshu like this. At that moment, Yun Sheng's body was surrounded by a dense, murderous aura. There was an undeniable dignity between her brows. Xiao Wenshu couldn't help but sigh. He still remembered the first time he met Yun Sheng. She had helped that pregnant woman deliver her child. At that time she had the same expression. Xiao Wenshu's eyebrows twitched. He suddenly remembered that at that time, he had also seen that the pregnant woman was about to die. However, that pregnant woman had survived in the end. So be it. Although the will of the heavens couldn't be defied, it wasn't impossible for man to overcome the will of the heavens. Since that was the case, he would help her again. Only this time he was completely willing. Even if his master found out later and wanted to punish him, he wouldn't complain at all. Xiao Wenshu began to chant, and a gentle light magic enveloped Yun Ba's body. However, Yun Sheng didn't use her needle for a long time. When Dagua also watched from the side. He wanted to see what kind of needle skills Yun Sheng would use to stitch up Yun Ba's wound. However, Yun Sheng didn't have a needle in her hand. Chapter 420. She even slowly closed her eyes, her lips moving slightly as if she was saying something. Xiao Wenshu could only vaguely make out what Yun Sheng was saying. Yun Sheng was reciting the incantation for the soul-healing needles, the Yen family Shinong soul-healing needles. The fourth level of the dark needles. That's right, Yun Sheng didn't intend to use the bright needles. No matter how fast the needle technique was, it was impossible even if she used the trillium hand. Only the invisible dark needles had a chance. Yun Ba's wound couldn't be healed by ordinary needle techniques. When Dagua's words could be said to be correct. On the continent, there wasn't a single doctor whose needle technique could be faster than magic. It was almost impossible to stifle the wound while using light magic to stop the bleeding. But to Yun Sheng, as long as there was a chance, she would give it a try. When the light magic appeared, Yun Sheng's eyes flickered and a glint flashed through her eyes. She pressed her hand on Yun Ba's wound. Her hand was very white, and it was even more shocking when contrasted against the bloody wound. Xiao Wenshu didn't know what Yun Sheng's motive was, but he didn't get distracted and focused on reciting the incantation. Suddenly he noticed a faint light flashing across Yun Ba's chest. In an instant, the power of the jade marrow technique in Yun Sheng's body turned into many dark needles. They quickly merged into the blood, and under the urging of Yun Sheng's power, they quickly swam through Yun Ba's body, quickly healing his organs. The dark needles were called dark needles. Apart from the person who used them, no one else could see them. Even Yun Ba only felt a slight itch running through his body. Yun Ba was seriously injured and he didn't know what the pain was like being bitten by ants. But he could feel that the fighting energy in his body was gradually recovering, and his originally scattered consciousness was gradually awakening. Yun Sheng's soul-healing divine needle was a miraculous needle technique left behind by Emperor Yen of Shinong. It was able to transform the power of the jade marrow technique into needle-shaped inner energy that flowed through the blood throughout the body. Under the effect of the hidden needles, the internal injuries that couldn't be healed by normal methods actually healed Yun Ba's shattered internal organs at a miraculous speed that the naked eye couldn't predict. However, all of this was happening within Yun Ba's body. Everyone looked over. Yun Sheng did not operate the needle. However, Xiao Wenshu noticed that Yun Ba's complexion was gradually becoming better. However, Yun Sheng's face was getting uglier and uglier. The spirit-healing divine needle was divided into bright and dark needles. Usually, when Yun Sheng used the Four Seasons colored glass needles, it was easy for her to use the bright needles, but the dark needles were different. In Yun Sheng's previous life, she had cultivated the soul-healing divine needle for more than 20 years, but she had only reached the third level. In this life she was only 8 years old, but due to her fortuitous encounter and the abundant spiritual energy in the boundless world, she had already reached the peak of the third level at such a young age. She could shoot out 10 hidden needles at once. However, just 10 hidden needles weren't enough to heal all of Yun Ba's damaged internal organs. In a moment of desperation, Yun Sheng had no choice but to forcefully activate the jade marrow technique and shoot out 15 hidden needles at once. The 15 hidden needles moved in an instant. That was the fourth level of the spirit-healing divine needle. When Yun Sheng forcefully activated it, It was as if a car that could only accelerate to a speed of 100 kilometers per hour suddenly accelerated to 150 kilometers per hour. Her body and inner energy were all overloaded. Every time she healed a wound in Yunba's body, the burden on her body increased by a little. In the end, her clothes and hair were completely drenched in sweat. Yun Sheng's entire body had become a water person. When the last part of Yunba's necrotic muscles was healed by the light magic, Yun Sheng's last hidden needle was also completed and healed Yunba's internal organs. Almost at the same time, her body went limp and she spat out a mouthful of blood. "Miss Yun?" Xiao Wenshu panicked. Just as he was about to support Yun Sheng, a figure darted behind him. Yi Baiming wrapped his arms around Yun Sheng's waist. Just now, when Yun Sheng was treating Yun Ba, Yi Baiming was worried that he would disturb her, so he didn't go forward. Now he saw that the little wild kitten's usually rosy face was completely pale. Her hands and feet were ice cold, and her small face was as pale as a sheet of paper. She was clearly exhausted. When Yi Baiming hugged her, she didn't move at all. Her long eyelashes covered her spirited eyes, making her look so pale and powerless. Yi Baiming had never seen Yun Sheng like this. At that moment he panicked from the bottom of his heart. He had a panicked feeling that Yun Sheng would disappear in the next second. Xiao Wenshu looked at his empty hands and then at Yun Sheng in Yi Baiming's arms. His expression changed slightly, like a piece of thousand-year-old ice that suddenly cracked after receiving a heavy blow. Dark Crown Prince Duguxiu pursed his lips, his gaze falling on the person buried in Yi Baiming's arms. The Emperor of Zhou State and Empress Qi also noticed Yi Baiming's loss of self-control. When Dagua hurried forward, he glanced at Yunba and couldn't help but let out a soft cry of surprise. On the bed, Yunba had already fallen into a deep sleep. The gaping wound on his chest had already completely healed. When Dagua then checked the other wounds on his body. After checking, when Dagua couldn't help but mutter to himself, "How is this possible? How is this possible? She clearly didn't use any needles just now." She didn't use any needles, but Yunba's ruptured organs had indeed been stitched up. At least, there were no signs of bleeding in his body. Xiao Wenshu went forward and also checked. After a long while he said, "The bleeding has stopped. If he can wake up tomorrow morning, his life should be fine." "How is Shenger?" Hearing that his father's life wasn't in danger for the time being, Yun Songlong breathed a sigh of relief. He walked in front of Yi Baiming wanting to check on Yun Sheng's condition, but was stopped by Yi Baiming. "She's asleep." Yun Sheng was like a kitten quietly curled up in Yi Baiming's arms. Her breathing was steady, and her nostrils flared slightly. She had actually fallen asleep due to overexertion. At this moment in the palace, no one dared to underestimate Yun Sheng anymore. In just a little more than 15 minutes, she had actually cured the wound that even when Dagua couldn't do anything about. Zhou State's emperor's heart was in turmoil. He didn't expect Zhou State to have such a medical talent. How could such a talent be lost to the common people? Empress Qi's eyes also flashed slightly, looking back and forth between Yi Baiming and Yun Sheng. Chen Lianer looked at Yi Baiming and Yun Sheng with jealousy and hatred. This time Yun Sheng, that little bitch, had stolen the limelight again. Duguxiu looked at the unconscious Yun Sheng, his heart unbearably itchy. Whether it was Yun Sheng or Yan Yun, she wasn't just a summoner, she was also an astonishingly skilled healer. This woman, he was determined to have her. This child will take his leave first. Yi Baiming only looked at Yun Sheng in his arms. After feeling her steady breathing, his originally worried heart finally relaxed. Chapter 421. At this moment, no one in the palace dared to underestimate Yun Sheng anymore. In just a little more than 15 minutes, she had cured the injury that even when Dagua had been helpless against. Zhou State's emperor's heart was filled with countless thoughts. He didn't expect that Zhou State had such a medical talent. How could such a talent fall into the hands of the common people? Empress Qi's eyes also flashed as she looked back and forth between Yi Baiming and Yun Sheng. Chen Lianer looked at Yi Baiming and Yun Sheng with jealousy and hatred. This time Yun Sheng, that little slut, had stolen the limelight again. Duguxiu looked at the unconscious Yun Sheng, his heart unbearably itchy. Whether it was Yun Sheng or Yan Yun, she wasn't just a summoner, she was also an astonishingly skilled healer. He was determined to have this woman. This child will take his leave first. Yi Baiming only looked at Yun Sheng in his arms. After feeling her steady breathing, his originally worried heart finally relaxed a little. He ignored everyone's astonished gazes, as well as Xiao Wenshu's unrelenting gaze behind him. He carried Yun Sheng and slowly walked out of the palace. Yun Sheng slept very soundly. Ever since she became a sorcerer and learned how to meditate, especially after she comprehended deep meditation, she rarely slept. This time, because she used the hidden needles, she was exhausted and unknowingly fell asleep. When she woke up, she turned over and suddenly felt that something was wrong with her hands and feet. She opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was an extra-large handsome face, just inches away from her. Yibiming. Night Fox. Why are you here? Yunsheng vaguely remembered that she was applying needles to stop Yunba's bleeding. She remembered that because she was exhausted, after confirming that Yunba would be fine, she fainted from exertion. I should be the one asking you that. Yesterday I kindly sent you back. Who knew that you would hug me so tightly and not let go? I saw that you were sleeping soundly, so I could only let you hug me until dawn. Yibiming pointed at Yunsheng's hand. Yunsheng looked down and was shocked. When she came to her senses, she saw that her arms were wrapped around Yibiming's neck like a koala, and her 2 legs were wrapped around Yibiming's narrow waist. This position was as ambiguous as it could get. His face instantly flushed red. Yibiming, on the other hand, was not in a hurry. Last night he had been hugged by Yunsheng like this all night. Only then did he realize that the little wild cat's sleeping posture was really not that good. Why did you send me back? Is old General Yun alright? Yunsheng was still worried about the amniotic fluid poison in Yunba's body. Old General Yun is fine for the time being. Yibiming smiled. When Yunsheng asked this question, she was still lying on the bed with Yibiming. Yibiming sent her back to the medicine hall. When he was half asleep, Yunsheng treated Yibiming as the pillow on her bed in her previous life and refused to let go. Yibiming was also happy to let her hug him. This bed was originally used by Yunsheng to rest in the medicine hall, so it was very small. Yibiming was at least 1.8 meters tall. When the two of them were squeezed together, Yunsheng could even hear his strong heartbeat. Their posture was too ambiguous. Yunsheng had no choice but to use her hand to push Yibiming away. The latter was half lying down with his left hand propped up. Yibiming's lapel was half open, revealing a piece of firm bronze skin. His fox-like eyes seemed to be squinting yet not squinting. That look, it was as if he could cause as much trouble as he wanted. Little wild cat, do you know that you have gotten into big trouble today? Yibiming looked at Yunsheng and frowned. You mean, my unique needle technique? It's not a problem. I can just push the blame to Xiao Wenshu and say that his light magic had a special effect. At that time, Yunsheng was also forced to use the soul healing needle without thinking much. But after thinking about it, she also felt that it was a little inappropriate. The illness that even when Daiguoshu couldn't treat was cured by her. Although this was a great humiliation to the Medicine Emperor Pavilion, at the same time, it also exposed Yunsheng's true medical skills. Paper can't wrap fire. I believe that when I sent you back, when Daiguoshu already knew the truth from Xiao Wenshu's mouth, you really used your unique needle technique? Yibiming was doubtful. He had seen Yunsheng use the needles before, but he had never heard of such a technique. Not to mention today she didn't even need to use the needles to save Yunba. The Yun residence was a family of generals. Even if Yunsheng had led a wandering life since young, that kind of needle technique was definitely not something that could be learned in a place like Banana Leaf Village. Yunsheng was at a loss for words. If Yibiming was suspicious, others would naturally be suspicious. That's my mother's unique needle technique. Yunsheng had a sudden inspiration and found her cheap mother, Hu Jiuxing, to be her shield. Hu Jiuxing was indeed proficient in medical skills. This could be seen from the medical records left behind by the Yun family. Yibiming was skeptical, but he didn't pursue the matter. He knew that Yunsheng lost her mother when she was young. Compared to him, she hadn't even seen her mother once. It was rare for her to be so open-minded. Yibiming's heart softened slightly. He raised his hand and rubbed Yunsheng's hair. Yunsheng's hair was very soft and felt good to the touch. Yibiming said half-truthfully, "Little wild cat, don't be stubborn in the future. I'm here for everything." Yunsheng's hair was instantly rubbed into a nest of straw. She immediately became like an angry wild cat and slapped Yibiming's hand away. It'll be strange if I have you. Tell me, how did he get injured? Also, how did the hidden crown prince injure old General Yun? When she entered the palace just now, she was in a hurry to treat old General Yun's illness and hadn't asked clearly about the competition. When Yunsheng examined Yunba's wound just now, she had already noticed that the wound was fatal. Yibiming's eyes were deep and serene. This time he had miscalculated. His memory drifted back to yesterday, to that sudden blood disaster. Tian Keizi's disappearance caused this once-in-a-decade martial sage competition to come to an end without any results. The hidden crown prince was very regretful about this matter. However, according to the agreement, since Tian Keizi was missing, he couldn't continue to pester about the purple gold mine. Thus, he personally went to the palace to send him off. The other party was the crown prince of a state. Now that later Qin's fierce army was still eyeing the border, the Zhou state's emperor naturally had to be courteous. He personally held a banquet to welcome the hidden crown prince and even invited Yunba to attend. At the banquet, after a round of singing and dancing, the young city lord of Grand Emperor City, Xian Wuji, suddenly said that singing and dancing were boring. Since Zhou state and later Qin were both states that revered martial arts, why not have a duel to add some color to today's farewell banquet? The Zhou state's emperor also didn't expect this. Just as he was hesitating, the hidden crown prince suddenly stepped forward. The hidden crown prince claimed that he admired Zhou state's martial sage Yunba since he was young. He also received Tian Keizi's teachings and can be considered half of his disciple. Since Tian Keizi can't fight with Yunba this time, he's willing to exchange a few moves with Yunba as his disciple. Yi Baiming was the noble Lord Baiming and naturally attended this banquet. The hidden crown prince is the crown prince of another state and is also a junior. Why would old General Yun fight with him? Yun Sheng was very clear about the old man's personality. To put it nicely, he wasn't willing to flaunt his seniority. To put it bluntly, it was the so-called pride. He would never fight with a junior. Back then at the restaurant, if she hadn't forced the Yun residents into a corner, he definitely wouldn't have made a move. However, even if he did make a move, he still held back some of his strength. Old General Yun indeed didn't agree. After all, Duguxiu's identity is there. If anything happens to him, it would be equivalent to giving other states a reason to criticize him. Later Qin and Tang Yuan's armies are still at the Zhou state's border. Yi Baiming was also somewhat puzzled about Duguxiu's request. The Wuji Five Gems' reputation was very resounding, but compared to Yunba, who had been famous for a long time, it was undoubtedly an egg striking a stone. However, the hidden crown prince used both the carrot and the stick. Under his insistence, old General Yun had no choice but to agree to his challenge. However, Yunba was still a little cautious. He didn't really fight with the hidden crown prince and only wanted to exchange 3 moves with him. The hidden crown prince also readily agreed. Only 3 moves? Yun Sheng was even more incredulous. It was only 3 moves, but Yunba actually suffered such serious injuries. Because during the last move, the hidden crown prince went berserk. Yi Baiming's gaze was solemn. He clearly remembered the scene at that time. After blocking the first 2 moves, Yunba originally thought that the Dark Crown Prince would give up. But who would have thought that during the 3rd move, the Dark Crown Prince would suddenly go berserk and punch Yunba's chest. Yunba vomited blood on the spot and his chest was hollowed out by the hidden Crown Prince. Punching through a martial sage's body with 1 punch? And it was an instant berserk? Then what exactly did the hidden Crown Prince fuse with? Yun Sheng was speechless. Although she didn't see the situation back then, just by looking at Yunba's smashed internal organs, she could guess how terrifying the might of the Dark Crown Prince's punch was. You should have guessed it already. The problem lies in the hidden Crown Prince's beast blood fusion. Yi Baiming paused. If I'm not wrong, the hidden Crown Prince should have fused with the blood of a divine beast. Divine beast? Yun Sheng's mind buzzed. The hidden Crown Prince Duguxiu's beast blood berserk was only a partial berserk. The duration was extremely short and it was impossible to guard against. In an instant, black scales that looked like dragon scales appeared on his right arm. His heavy punch carried the force of 5,000 kilograms. Yunba's protective do chi was instantly torn apart by this heavy blow, and the fist landed squarely on his chest. The amniotic fluid poison in his body had also suddenly erupted, causing him to bleed profusely and nearly die. Speaking of divine beasts, Yun Sheng's first thought was Swanni. She had met the divine beast Swanni in the Earth's core furnace cave. How many years had it been since a divine beast appeared in the boundless continent? From the 1st rank to the 9th rank, the commander-level magical beasts were called sacred beasts. Above them were the lord-level divine beasts. All divine beasts had their own territory. As for above them, there were the so-called sacred beasts, which were existences of legends. My friends in the bookstore are looking over. I'm on a business trip for a week. I'm on a trip on Sunday and Monday. I'll update in 2 days. Chapter 422. On the boundless continent, magicians, warriors, and summoners all flocked to magical beasts. This led to the great massacre of magical beasts many years ago, which eventually led to the emergence of the Duqian blood cloud realm. To people of different statuses, magical beasts had different values. To magicians, magical beasts' bones and soul stones were their most important magic tools. To warriors, magical beasts' blood strengthened their bodies and was the key to breaking through the martial realm. And to summoners, having a magical beast at the level of a holy beast or even a divine beast was a dream. Yun Sheng had also thought of forming a contract with Tao Wu, but when she felt the other party's powerful magical beast aura, Yun Sheng already understood that even if she had the summoning demon hand, she would not be able to form a contract with a divine beast. But the Dark Crown Prince Duguxiu had fused with the blood of a divine beast. This made his body's strength reach an unprecedented state. Part of his beast blood went berserk, and he punched through the martial saint's chest. What happened next was just like what you saw. This matter could only be dropped like this. We agreed that it was a competition, and the Emperor of Zhou State would not pursue the Dark Crown Prince's responsibility. After Yi Baiming finished speaking, Yun Sheng remained silent, but the flames of anger were burning in her eyes. Dropped like this? If it wasn't for my medical family's acupuncture technique, old General Yun would have died. Yun Sheng thought of Yun Ba's haggard face. The dignified martial saint of Zhou State was humiliated by another country's crown prince. As the Emperor of Zhou State, the Emperor of Zhou State dismissed him with the words a competition? This was the Emperor of Laozi. As the Emperor he could not stand up for his subjects. To think that everyone in the Yun residence was loyal to him. Yun Sheng was indignant. Just then Yun Songlong came to visit. Yi Baiming saw that the uncle and niece had something to talk about, so he took his leave. What happened in the imperial palace of Zhou State seemed to have subsided, but in fact, a new undercurrent was surging. The core of the undercurrent was Yun Sheng, who inadvertently exposed her magical acupuncture skills. Later on in the Qin embassy, the Dark Prince Duguxiu changed his clothes under the help of a maid. Even though he was unable to directly kill Yun Ba, the Dark Crown Prince appeared to be in a rather joyous mood. Congratulations, Dark Prince. I didn't expect you to have fused with the blood of a divine beast. Xian Wuji had been trying to curry favor with Duguxiu ever since he came out of Zhou State's palace. The Dark Crown Prince looked absent-minded and didn't take Xian Wuji's flattery to heart. Today's banquet was originally planned to secretly sow discord between later Qin and Zhou State. Who would have thought that in the end, the banquet would end with the Dark Crown Prince seriously injuring Yun Ba? Unfortunately, all his efforts were for naught in the end. That old fellow Yun Ba was still not dead. Thinking of this, Xian Wuji felt so resentful that the roots of his teeth itched. He didn't understand medicine, but he knew that Yun Ba's survival this time had a lot to do with that girl called Yun Sheng. He more or less had some memories of that girl. Last time in the west of Zhou State, it was that girl who ruined his plans. Dark Crown Prince, all our efforts were for naught this time. It's all that girl's fault. I don't know what kind of evil method she used to actually cure Yun Ba. But don't worry, even if it's a cure, it's only temporary. The amniotic fluid poison of a demonic beast isn't something that can be cured by ordinary antidotes. This time that girl almost lost her life in order to save Yun Ba. She'll only be a disaster if we keep her alive. Why don't we find someone to kill her first? Xian Wuji still wanted to encourage the Dark Crown Prince. Who knew that the Dark Crown Prince didn't feel happy after hearing his words. Instead he became displeased. Just now in the Imperial Palace, Yun Sheng vomited blood and her face was ashen. This made the Dark Crown Prince feel uneasy. He didn't understand where this feeling came from. Even if he wanted to torture that girl he could only do it himself. The Dark Crown Prince recalled the nervous expressions of Lord Baiming of Zhou State and Xiao Wenshu of the Dharma Temple and felt even more uneasy. His face darkened. Xian Wuji's incessant chatter was especially annoying. Young City Lord, I think our cooperation ends here. I'll be leaving the Jade Capital in a few days. Young City Lord, please do as you wish. The Dark Crown Prince didn't have a good impression of someone like Xian Wuji. He more or less knew about the grudge between Xian Wuji and the Yun residents. The Dark Crown Prince never liked being used by others, so he didn't plan on being Xian Wuji's shield forever. Xian Wuji's expression changed when he heard this. The Bloody Hand Trench was massacred and he didn't have any capable guards by his side. Xian Wuji still remembered Yun Songlong's ruthless look when he looked at him in the Imperial Palace. After all, the Jade Capital was Yun Songlong's territory. If he didn't have the Dark Crown Prince's guards, he would definitely be attacked. Although he was the young city lord of Grand Emperor City, he couldn't be compared to the Crown Prince of a state. Zhou State wouldn't help him. The Dark Crown Prince waved his hand and ordered people to chase Xian Wuji out. Xian Wuji was flustered and exasperated, but he didn't dare to offend the Dark Crown Prince. He could only pack his luggage and escape out of the city. Crown Prince Miss Chen Lian requests an audience. Not long after Xian Wuji left, the embassy guard came to report. Chen Lian, you finally came to find me. The Dark Crown Prince had a mocking expression when he saw Chen Lian coming to find him. Please forgive me, Crown Prince. Lian won't dare to do it again. Please give me medicine. Chen Lian anxiously covered her face. Red marks appeared on her porcelain-like face. After her face was scratched by the water arrow fin fish's poison, the Dark Crown Prince ordered people to treat it for her. She was also cunning. She pretended to agree to be a spy for later Qin and let him send her back to Zhou State unscathed. When she returned to Zhou State, she immediately cut off contact with the Dark Crown Prince. Who knew that the Dark Crown Prince was even more cunning and ruthless than her? This morning Chen Lian discovered that her face was itchy. When she casually scratched it, a mark appeared. The more she scratched it, the more itchy it became. It made her feel like she was going to scratch her face and scratch her bones. The water arrow fin fish's poison on your body has been cured. However, your face was inflicted with another type of poison. This poison is called the maggot goo. This type of goo is a type of small insect. It specializes in nibbling away at human skin. If you don't have this Crown Prince's antidote, it will slowly bite your skin and eventually break out of your body. First your face, then your body. In less than 3 months, your beautiful face that made the Crown Prince of Zhou State fall head over heels for will turn into a pile of bones. The Dark Crown Prince's voice was low and carried a bit of magnetism. However, when it landed in Chen Lian's ears, it was as bone-piercing as a cold wind. Her beautiful eyes widened in horror. She shrunk and didn't dare to disobey the Dark Crown Prince. She couldn't imagine her body being covered in maggots and turning into a pile of bones. Chapter 423. Crown Prince, Lian won't dare to do it again. Please let Lian go. No matter what you want Lian to do, Lian will agree. What Chen Lian cared about the most was her face. She knelt on the ground and kept begging the Dark Crown Prince. Get up. It's really a bummer for such a delicate beauty to end up like this. The Dark Crown Prince was half regretful and half sorrowful. He lifted Chen Lian's smooth chin with his finger. Chen Lian's face was covered with tears. She looked so pitiful that it was enough to soften the hearts of most men in the world. It was a pity that the Dark Crown Prince wasn't someone who had tender feelings for the fairer sex. His appearance was outstanding, and with his red hair as a contrast, it made him look even more noble and handsome. His movements seemed gentle, but the coldness in his eyes revealed everything. Chen Lian was so frightened that her teeth chattered. How much do you know about Yun Sheng? The Dark Crown Prince asked gently. Chen Lian was puzzled. Crown Prince, what do you mean? Tell me everything about her. The Dark Crown Prince's voice was no longer cold. There was a greedy desire in his tone. If it was said that he had only been competing with Yun Sheng earlier, wanting to take revenge on her for her rudeness to him, then he would not have been able to do so. However, after witnessing her actions today, the Dark Crown Prince was even more determined to obtain her. He still remembered that when she was faced with blood, her pure white face was indifferent. At that moment, the aura emitted from her body was so beautiful that it was suffocating. She was clearly an incomparably black-bellied person, but at that moment, there was a kind of holy light. These two completely different temperaments appeared on the same person. Just thinking about it made the Dark Crown Prince's mind sway and he couldn't control himself. Right now, even though Yun Sheng was still young in time, she would definitely grow into a beauty that would cause people's hearts to palpitate. Unparalleled medical skills, a calm mind, and a mysterious summoning technique. Only such a woman was worthy of him, Wuxia. Chen Lian saw the naked desire in the Dark Crown Prince's eyes. That kind of desire wasn't just a man's desire for a woman. It was similar to a beast's desire for a mate. Chen Lian's heart surged with intense jealousy that bordered on hatred. It was undeniable that the Dark Crown Prince was cruel, but he was definitely a dragon among men. The Wuji 5 annulus, the fusion of divine beast blood, and the position of the later Qin Crown Prince, all of which made him the target of countless girls. However, such a person showed a strong interest in Yun Sheng. Yi Baiming was the same. When she thought of how Yi Baiming had carefully hugged Yun Sheng in the hall, and the touch of love and affection in his eyes, Chen Lian felt like her heart was about to be crushed. Chen Lian had never seen Yun Sheng like that in Yi Baiming. He would only reveal such an expression in front of Yun Sheng. However, the Dark Crown Prince was also acting in the same manner. Merely, the Dark Crown Prince's expression was even more explicit. Right now he was like a red-haired wolf king whose hair was standing on end. It couldn't be any better if the Dark Crown Prince wanted Yun Sheng. As long as she could deliver Yun Sheng to the Dark Crown Prince, Yi Baiming would never be able to see Yun Sheng again. Crown Prince regarding Yun Sheng. Chen Lianer said tirelessly. When Yun Sheng arrived at the Yun residence, Yun Ba had already woken up. When he saw Yun Sheng enter, Yun Ba's old face flushed red and then he coughed loudly. Your body? The two of them said at the same time. Uncle Yun, who was standing at the side, squeezed out a smile. Yun Ba had already heard the whole story from Uncle Yun. When he heard that Yun Sheng had fainted from exhaustion in order to save him, he was very touched and was also very concerned about Yun Sheng's injuries. The first thing he did when he woke up was to ask about Yun Sheng's injuries. Yun Sheng was also a little embarrassed. My injuries are fine, but let me take a look at your injuries. Earlier, when Dagwa came by and took a look at Master's injuries, he said that Master's internal organs have already been healed. He even called it a miracle and said that he had never seen anyone with such superb acupuncture skills. Uncle Yun clicked his tongue in praise. This time Little Miss really gained a lot of face. However, Yun Ba didn't reveal much joy this time. He had a premonition that Yun Sheng's exposure of her abilities this time might lead to bad things. Yun Sheng forced a smile and still went forward to take a look at Yun Ba's injuries. Just as when Dagwa said, Yun Ba's injuries were basically fine, but the magical beast amniotic fluid in his body still hadn't been removed. Where's second uncle? Yun Sheng looked around and didn't see Yun Songlong. Yun Sheng had already informed Yun Songlong to issue a commission at the hunter branch to hire hunters to search for the water of life. As long as the magical beast amniotic fluid wasn't removed, Yun Ba would be in danger. Although Tian Kezi was already dead, there were still other Martial Saint-level experts who could emerge. Second young master and deputy director Zhan have gone out. Uncle Yun had just said this when a guard suddenly came in to report. Old General, the Dark Crown Prince has come to visit with gifts. Upon hearing that the Dark Crown Prince had come, Yun Ba and Uncle Yun were both stunned. Yun Sheng also felt a little displeased. Yun Ba's injuries hadn't healed yet, but the culprit, the Dark Crown Prince, actually dared to come visit. She had seen shameless people before, but she had never seen someone as shameless as him. However, since he was a guest, Yun Ba couldn't refuse another country's crown prince at the door. Thus he had Uncle Yun welcome the Dark Crown Prince in. The Dark Crown Prince and his two guards entered the Yun residence. When he saw that Yun Sheng was also present, his eyes suddenly lit up and the corners of his lips curled up. However, Yun Sheng rolled her eyes at him. If it wasn't for the fact that she still needed to prescribe medicine for Yun Ba, she would definitely leave in a huff. Old General Yun, this Crown Prince is here to apologize. The Dark Crown Prince saw Yun Sheng's reaction and his smile deepened. Today, he had a humble expression and even brought 5 to 6 types of Saint-grade medicinal herbs for a visit. Those who didn't know him would really think that he was here to visit a patient. Crown Prince Dugu is too polite. This old man and you had a normal amputation. I'm the one who's sorry to trouble the Crown Prince to come personally. Although Yun Ba spoke humbly, he had already cursed the Dark Crown Prince's 18 generations of ancestors in his heart. Later Qin and Zhou state didn't see eye to eye with each other and had been in a deadlock for hundreds of years. Dugu Xiu was also the most authoritative prince of later Qin. The outside world had long known that he would inherit the later Qin throne. Yun Ba was a veteran general of Zhou state. Back then he had killed countless later Qin soldiers on the battlefield of later Qin. When the two met, even if they didn't fight to the death, it was definitely difficult for them to get along peacefully. Not to mention Dugu Xiu even brought a pile of gifts. His tone was cordial and he had a smile on his face. That appearance was like a son-in-law visiting his father-in-law. No matter how one looked at it, it was like a weasel paying a visit to a chicken. Yun Ba was just about to ask Uncle Yun to decline the other party's gifts when Yun Sheng had already taken the medicinal herbs and casually glanced at them. Dark Crown Prince, don't be so stingy. You almost killed him and you only brought a few Saint-grade medicinal herbs. If word of this spread out, people would think that a great country like later Qin couldn't even take out a decent gift. When the two guards behind the Dark Crown Prince heard Yun Sheng's mocking tone, they were instantly infuriated. However, Dugu Xiu wasn't anxious at all. Miss Yun is right. It seems that this Crown Prince was lacking in etiquette. Someone bring that fan-leaf feather mushroom over and give it to the old general. Fan-leaf feather mushroom? Yun Sheng was stunned. Yunba and Uncle Yun were also stunned. Yun Sheng studied medicine and was very familiar with the medicinal herbs of the continent. The fan-leaf feather mushroom was a high-grade Saint-grade medicinal herb. Its shape was very similar to a feather, but its color was pure white. It grew on the Snow Maiden Peak in the northernmost part of the continent. It was said that it only appeared once every 1,000 years. Although its grade couldn't be compared to the divine grade 9-leaf sage ginseng, it was already a top-grade Saint-grade medicinal herb. The greatest use of this medicinal herb was to purify one's body. It was said that if a martial ancestor expert consumed a single fan-leaf feather mushroom, they would be able to cleanse their bones and break through the bottleneck of the martial saint realm. Its effect might not be comparable to the water of life, but it was still somewhat effective in alleviating the poison in Yunba's body. Crown Prince. The guards were also at a loss. This saint-grade medicinal herb was specially prepared by the Emperor of Later Qin for the Dark Crown Prince to break through to the martial saint realm in the future. The Dark Crown Prince gave it to Yunba. This person was also the enemy of the Later Qin. They were afraid that this wasn't a good thing. This Crown Prince doesn't wish to say it a second time. The Dark Crown Prince's eyes darkened as if a storm was coming. The guards didn't dare to ask any more and hurriedly returned to the embassy to retrieve the medicinal herb. Dark Crown Prince, you're too polite. This old man can't accept such a precious medicinal herb. Yunba could only stand up. Old General, you don't have to be so polite. This Crown Prince accidentally injured you, so please don't treat me as an outsider. Actually, this humble one came here today to ask for a favor. I hope that Old General can agree to this Crown Prince's request. The Dark Crown Prince's face was still radiant, but his gaze landed on Yun Sheng from time to time. Yun Sheng felt that something was wrong. No one knew better than her the grudge between her and the Dark Crown Prince. However, this fellow had a constipated expression as if he wanted to beat or kill her just a moment ago, but now he kept calling her Miss Yun. She didn't know what he was thinking. I've admired Miss Yun for a long time and hope to use this diplomatic trip to Zhou State to propose marriage to Old General and betroth Miss Yun to me. I promise that as long as I'm the Crown Prince, she will be the Crown Prince consort. If I ascend the throne as the Emperor, she will be the Empress of the Later Qin. The Dark Crown Prince spoke sincerely and carefully. He used I, and not this Crown Prince, which showed his sincerity. Yun Sheng, who was drinking tea at the side, spat out all the tea in her mouth. Duguxiu was sitting very close to Yun Sheng, so when she spat out the tea, it sprayed all over his face. His brows didn't even twitch as he calmly wiped away the tea on his face. Yun Sheng's current expression couldn't be described with ordinary wonderful. Marriage proposal. Duguxiu actually came to propose marriage. Chapter 424. How could he be so shameless? How old was he and how old was she? Although Yunqing's 2 lifetimes added together would make her almost 30 years old, right now she had the appearance of a lowly but the heart of an older sister. Duguxiu was at least 17 or 18 years old this year. This was a classic case of an old cow nibbling on young grass. Yunba also looked like he was struck by lightning. He muttered in his heart, "How old is this little lass? Isn't this marriage a little too early?" Putting aside the fact that the relationship between Later Qin and Zhou State was like fire and water, his relationship with his own granddaughter had yet to be reconciled. This Duguxiu's brain must have been kicked by a demonic beast and suffered brain damage. Compared to the grandfather and granddaughter pair who were struck by lightning and couldn't tell the difference between north and south, Uncle Yun's reaction was much faster. "Your Highness, you must be joking, right? Our family's young miss is still young. Moreover, as the Crown Prince of Later Qin, you should already have a wife and children, right?" Uncle Yun's words made Yun Sheng's mouth twitch fiercely again. In the boundless world, people got married early. Normally, men would already have concubines by the age of 13 or 14. Even if that didn't work, they would still have servant girls to sleep with. With the Dark Crown Prince's body, it was obvious that he was a classic animal who thought with his lower body. If he was more diligent, the Dark Crown Prince's residence would have already raised a football team. For some reason, Yun Sheng thought of Yi Baiming. Speaking of which, the Night Fox was already in his teens. Then was he? Thinking of this, Yun Sheng felt a burst of unhappiness in her heart. When the Dark Crown Prince saw a flash of unhappiness on Yun Sheng's pretty face, he thought that she was concerned about the women in his harem. To be honest, the Dark Crown Prince really had a lot of beauties in his harem. Later Qin was a valiant country to begin with. Men advocated early marriage and having more wives. This way they could choose the most outstanding successor among the many children. The Dark Crown Prince's father had several hundred concubines and he had over 100 children. Normal women indeed didn't like this style. The Dark Prince's eyes narrowed as he glanced at Yun Sheng. Miss Yun isn't young anymore. Women can get married when they're 12 years old. This consort can wait another 3 years until she turns 12 before we officially get married. As for this consort's harem, there are already 3 secondary consorts, 4 noble ladies and 2 children. However, the position of main consort has always been empty. What he meant was that he was willing to treat her as his wife. When Duguxiu said this, even Yunba couldn't help but be moved. Duguxiu was the crown prince of a country, and he was also the powerful crown prince of later Qin. It was already very shocking that he could make such a promise to an ordinary woman from an enemy country. However, Yunba coughed. Crown Prince Dugu, you should have heard that Yun Xing didn't grow up in the Yun residence. Her marriage should be decided by herself. Duguxiu had a face full of confidence as he looked at Yun Sheng. He had originally thought that Yun Sheng would definitely be moved by his words. It wasn't that Duguxiu was conceited, but he did have the capital to back up his confidence. As the crown prince of later Qin, he was the most promising successor to the throne in later Qin. He held great power and wasn't like Yi Balian who was just a flower crown prince. What was even more commendable was that he was one of the Wuji 5 Jade Annulus. His strength was outstanding and his appearance was handsome and imposing. The number of women in later Qin who yearned for him day and night was enough to circle the later Qin capital a few times. When these conditions were added together, he would be considered a golden bachelor in the modern era. Even in the Wuji continent he would be unparalleled. The Dark Prince couldn't think of any reason why Yun Sheng would reject him. Who knew that Yun Sheng would snort softly when she heard that? I don't agree to this marriage. The Dark Prince's face flushed red as if he had drunk a large mouthful of strong alcohol. All sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. He suddenly stood up. If Yun Ba wasn't present he would probably have attacked Yun Sheng without a second word. This damned woman. She actually dared to reject his proposal. Why? The Dark Prince asked through gritted teeth. His red hair was like a ball of fiery clouds. Firstly, I don't have any feelings for you. Secondly, the husband I marry in the future must be like my parents, a couple for the rest of our lives. I don't have the time to scheme against your women. Yun Xing had a relaxed expression. Her pair of outstanding eyes were slightly raised, making her look flirtatious and pretty. The 2 dimples at the side of her mouth rippled. The words that came out of her mouth were clearly infuriating, but it made one unable to get angry. There are no feelings that can be nurtured. This crown prince's father and mother nurtured their feelings after marriage. As for being a couple for the rest of our lives, the Dark Prince pondered. Most of the women in his harem were bestowed by his father. There was also a personal maid chosen by the later Qin Empress for him. The rest were the daughters and sisters of some officials. These women were usually used by him to satisfy his physiological needs, so he didn't have much feelings for them. However, if he wanted to ascend the throne as the later Qin emperor, he would have to weigh the various relationships. Marrying some concubines in the harem was an indispensable means. Chapter 425. When Yi Baiming was in a bad mood, he would not lose his temper like ordinary people. Due to living in the cold palace all year round during his childhood, when he was in a bad mood, he would choose not to say a word. Long Hua had followed Yi Baiming for a long time. He could feel that his master was in a bad mood right now. All of you leave. Yi Baiming was distraught as he ordered his subordinates to leave. Duguxiu. Yi Baiming's gray eyes were dyed with a red light. Without any hesitation he immediately arrived at Wushuan Limitless Hall. In the medicine hall, Yun Sheng was frowning as she looked at the remaining amniotic fluid poison that she had seized from Yun Sangxue. She was deep in thought with a frown. From the looks of it, she was not affected by Duguxiu's proposal at all. Hearing the sound of footsteps, Yun Sheng did not even raise her head. She was very familiar with Yi Baiming's footsteps. Just by listening to his breathing, she knew that he had arrived. Duguxiu went to the Yun residence to propose? Yi Baiming was originally agitated, but when he saw Yun Sheng he could not help but calm down a lot. Yun Sheng's appearance when she was completely focused was very beautiful. She was not like ordinary women who like to use rouge and face powder. Her neck was very slender, and a few strands of black hair fell down her cheeks into her clothes. Her slender fingers flipped through the medicine encyclopedia. Hearing Yi Baiming's question, Yun Sheng said casually, "Yes." You rejected him? Yi Biming subconsciously went to Yun Sheng's side. She had a very nice smell on her that made people's noses itch unconsciously. Yes. Yun Sheng did not pay attention to Yi Biming's words at all. She had already looked through more than half of the medicine encyclopedia, and all the information showed that there was only one way to completely remove the amniotic fluid poison of the magical beasts, and that was to find the elves' most precious treasure, the water of life. If this prince were to propose to you, would you agree? Yi Biming had unknowingly moved closer to Yun Sheng. Yun Sheng replied out of habit. By the time she came back to her senses, Yi Biming was already smiling happily. Wait, what did she just say? She seemed to have promised Night Fox something? Then it's settled. This prince will go to the palace tomorrow and ask Imperial Father for the marriage. Yi Biming smiled brilliantly. Yun Sheng blushed immediately. Night Fox. You set me up. She had not heard what he had said. Yun Sheng admitted that compared to the Dark Prince, Yi Biming was just a little bit better. However, the two of them were essentially the same. This was obvious just by looking at Chen Lianer's infatuated expression towards Yi Biming. Both of them were members of the imperial family and would have wives and concubines in the future. She looked at Yi Biming and her heart moved. She suddenly understood why Yi Biming proposed earlier. There was only one way to stop Duguxiu's proposal, and that was to get engaged before Duguxiu did. If there was an engagement, even someone as powerful as Duguxiu would be helpless. Not to mention the other party was Yi Biming, who was also a prince. Even if Yi Biming was not favored, he was still a prince of Zhou state. Duguxiu would not be able to do anything about his fiancée. His brows slowly relaxed. Yi Biming saw Yun Sheng's clear eyes. He knew that someone as smart as her had already understood his intentions. Ahem, Yi Biming, are you really willing to help me? Yun Sheng saw her face reflected in Yi Biming's gray eyes. Her heart rippled slightly. There was a subtle feeling that quietly sprouted. This was not an ordinary matter. It was related to Yi Biming's marriage. Of course I am willing. Who asked me to be your retainer? Yi Biming looked at Yun Sheng lovingly. He said in his heart, this prince is willing to take you as his wife. We will be together for the rest of our lives. Well, there is no time to lose. Go to the imperial palace and propose immediately. Yun Sheng's eyes lit up. She did not notice. Now. This time it was Yi Biming's turn to be in a daze. Yes, immediately. Otherwise Duguxiu will beat me to it. Rather than being engaged to him, I would rather be engaged to you. The sooner the better. Yun Sheng did not know what Duguxiu, that crazy man, would do. In order to avoid any more trouble, she desperately urged Yi Biming to go to the imperial palace and propose. When she happily agreed, a strange expression appeared on Yi Biming's face. Yi Biming smiled as if his scheme had succeeded. Chapter 426. The next day, Duguxiu entered the palace early in the morning as expected. When he explained the purpose of his visit, the Emperor of Zhou State revealed a strange expression. It's Yun Sheng again? Crown Prince Dugu, that Yun Sheng is just a commoner, and her appearance can only be considered above average. The Emperor of Zhou State was in a difficult position. This humble one has met Miss Yun once and hit it off with her. I've decided to marry no one else but her. This humble one hopes that the Emperor of Zhou State can grant my wish. If the Emperor of Zhou State can agree to this humble one's marriage proposal, this humble one can promise to never invade Zhou State's territory again in my lifetime, the Dark Crown Prince thought to himself. It didn't matter if the little girl was stubborn or if Yunba was pretending, they couldn't win against an imperial edict. If he married Yun Sheng with her intelligence and outstanding medical skills, as well as her master who was as strong as Emperor Zhao, a mere Zhou State wouldn't be in the Dark Crown Prince's eyes at all. Moreover, empty words were useless. He only promised that the Emperor of Zhou State wouldn't invade Zhou State in his lifetime, but the fate of the Emperor of Zhou State was still in his hands. The Emperor of Zhou State didn't expect the Dark Crown Prince to have so many twists and turns in his heart. He laughed dryly and said, Crown Prince Dugu, you're late. It's not that this emperor doesn't agree to your marriage proposal, but last night, Lord Biming proposed before you. He even brought Miss Yun's handwritten love letter with him. The two of them are in love with each other and have already pledged their lives to each other. The Dark Crown Prince's expression changed when he heard this. Zhou State's Lord Biming? He recalled the man who carried Yun Sheng away in the palace hall earlier. As if someone had punched him in the chest, the Dark Crown Prince Duguxiu froze. He was certain that Yun Xing didn't have a marriage agreement before yesterday. But in one night, just one night, she had a marriage agreement? This damned little girl. What mutual affection. What love letter. It was all bullshit. The Dark Crown Prince clenched his fists in anger. If he were to meet Yi Baiming now, he would definitely tear him into two. In his mind, Yun Sheng was already a piece of tender meat in his mouth. Who would have thought that in just a few hours, this fat duck would flap its wings and leave? To him, this was a great humiliation. He couldn't even remember how he walked out of the imperial palace of Zhou State. When he turned into the winding corridor of the palace, a person slowly approached him. Prince Dugu. The man's deep voice caused Dugu Xiu to raise his head. It was a clear autumn day. Under the big leaf parasol tree in the palace, Zhou State's Baiming King Yi Baiming stood at the side like a fine stone statue, as if he was waiting for the Dark Crown Prince. Yi Baiming. Dugu Xiu had not paid attention to this person before. He was arrogant to begin with. In his eyes, Zhou State was just a declining martial arts nation. However, because of that marriage, he took notice of Yi Baiming. He looked over and realized that he had really misjudged him back then. What a great Baiming king of Zhou State. It was said that among the Wuji 5 Annulus, Xiao Wenshu of the Temple of Justice and the Divine Wind King of Immortal Abode were the most handsome and extraordinary. Xiao Wenshu was just like his name. He was like the spring breeze. Wherever he went, there would be a burst of warmth. The Divine Wind King of Immortal Abode had the bloodline of an elf. His appearance and bearing were suitable for both men and women. However, when he saw Yi Baiming today, even though they were both men, Dugu Xiu felt like he couldn't take his eyes off him. Yi Baiming's appearance was rumored to be very similar to the deceased #1 beauty of Zhou State, Empress Li. His handsomeness was like the quiet night, causing people to unknowingly sink into it. The Dark Crown Prince coldly snorted in his heart. Lord Baiming King is so fast. However, don't be complacent. This prince's woman is never someone that others can covet. When Yi Baiming heard the words, this prince's woman, he felt displeased. He raised his eyebrows. Is Crown Prince Dugu talking about this prince's consort? I'm indebted to Crown Prince Dugu's misplaced love. Yun Sheng is this prince's woman. She has nothing to do with you. Yi Baiming spoke lightly, but as he spoke, a murderous intent flashed across his gray eyes. The Dark Crown Prince was even more furious. His figure suddenly sped up, and a patch of black scales suddenly appeared on his right arm. A heavy punch smashed toward Yi Baiming's chest with a bang. This punch was no small matter. That day at the banquet it was also a punch like this. The wind from the punch was like a flood dragon coming out of its cave. It was like a rainbow piercing through the sun. Under this attack, the surrounding air seemed to be torn apart, creating waves of ripples. It was also this punch that caused Yun Ba to suffer a hidden loss. A loud bang was heard. That muffled sound could be heard from several kilometers away. Above the winding corridor, the glazed tiles shattered and rolled down from the eaves like fallen leaves. The guards beside the two felt a sharp pain in their hearts, as if someone had stabbed them in the chest. When they looked at Yi Baiming and Dugu Xiu again, their shoulders had already collided. From afar, the two figures merged together, and their faces seemed to be covered by a layer of ice. It was impossible to tell who was the one who was attacked and who was the one who initiated the attack. On the Dark Crown Prince's right hand, black demonic beast scales spread out one by one. His fist directly smashed into Yi Baiming's chest. Fighting aura emitted from his fist, but his fist didn't advance any further. Yi Baiming's left hand pressed down on the Dark Crown Prince's right fist. The sharp black scales cut Yi Baiming's skin. Fresh blood dripped down. There wasn't the expected sound of bones cracking, nor was there the thrill of a fist piercing through flesh. The Dark Crown Prince was in disbelief. He clearly felt that the other party's hand was like a hedonistic shield that blocked his most fatal attack. Even Yun Ba would suffer a hidden loss from this punch under uncertain circumstances. However, this seemingly weak prince of Zhou State, who had never been famous on the continent, actually blocked it. Moreover, he only used his left hand to block the attack. He actually couldn't defeat the other party even in the state of beast blood frenzy. A chill quickly extinguished the pride that Dugu Xiu had accumulated for nearly 17 years. The black blood Qilin isn't omnipotent. Dugu Xiu, remember, Yun Sheng is Yi Baiming's woman. If you see her in the future, you're not allowed to even look at her. Otherwise, I'll definitely drain every drop of blood from your body. A cold, hellish male voice echoed in his ears. At that moment, Dugu Xiu felt as if he was on the brink of death. If he resisted for even a moment, the other party would crush him. Yi Baiming let go of his hand. He calmly wiped the blood off his left hand and walked over as if nothing had happened. The Dark Crown Prince stood in the corridor for a while. The encounter just now wasn't a coincidence. Yi Baiming was warning him. It was because of this warning that they met by chance. Yi Baiming, where exactly did you come from? Duguxiu's expression was gloomy. He glanced at the mess on the ground, and only Yi Baiming's words echoed in his mind. Yi Baiming took a few steps in the corridor of the palace. When he reached the vicinity of the cold palace, he waved his hand and the two guards tactfully retreated. Chapter 427. Today was the 14th of the 8th lunar month, the anniversary of Empress Li's death. Every year on this day, Dark North King would come to pay respects to Empress Li. After the guards left, Yi Baiming frowned. He suddenly leaned against a pillar and unbuttoned his left sleeve. Under the long robe, what was revealed was not Yi Baiming's arm, but an arm covered in scales. It wasn't just his left arm. His entire shoulder was covered in scales. The scales looked even more similar to Duguxiu's, except that his scales were golden. Yi Baiming secretly adjusted his breathing. The scales on his back also gradually disappeared. About 15 minutes later, his body returned to its original smoothness, looking no different from before. Recently, the frequency of berserk transformation seems to be getting more and more unstable. Yi Baiming pulled up his clothes. Other than his mother, no one else knew about this secret. The night gradually darkened. Yi Baiming took out a marriage contract from his chest. On it was the imperial seal of Zhou State. The cold palace was silent. Yi Baiming looked towards the palace where Empress Li used to live. Mother, your son has already found the woman he likes. Your son has promised her that he will be with her for the rest of his life. Mother, will you protect your son? A gust of wind suddenly blew in the desolate cold palace. The plain white curtains flew up, looking especially eerie at night. Yin Xing sneezed. Xing, you've lost weight recently. This is second uncle's personal matter. You don't have to ask. Yun Songlong looked at his niece with a worried expression. Recently, Yun Sheng's small face had become even smaller than before. It looked like it could be covered with a palm. Second uncle Shen Wuji has plotted against us time and time again. He's so cunning. How can you win against him alone? My crown prince failed to propose and left Yujing City. Yun Sheng sent people to keep an eye on his whereabouts and found that Shen Wuji didn't travel with him. The Bloodhand Tycoon had been destroyed and Shen Wuji had lost his protection. He was also not traveling with the Dark Prince. Now was the best time to kill him. Yun Songlong had wanted to kill Shen Wuji for a long time, but he could not do anything about Grand Emperor City. Now that he had recovered his strength and Shen Wuji had harmed the residents of Yun several times, Yun Songlong swore to kill Shen Wuji. However, Shen Wuji was also very cunning. He knew that he was in Zhou State and was in danger. Once he left the Jade capital, he lost track of his whereabouts. Even Yun Songlong couldn't find any clues about him. Second uncle Shen Wuji is in the dark while you are in the light. If he contacts the people from Grand Emperor City, you won't have a chance. Although Yun Songlong was skilled in martial arts and had rich battle experience, he was still inferior to Yun Sheng in some aspects. Yun Songlong could not stop Yun Sheng, so he could only agree to go with her to find Shen Wuji. Southern Cliff Town in the southern border of Zhou State. A middle-aged man in ordinary clothes walked into an inn. He had a sickly look on his long face. His facial features were very ordinary and he looked a little nervous. Waiter, get a room and prepare some food for me. The middle-aged man looked at the inn. It was a very inconspicuous inn. It was very simple and crude. Usually he would not even bother to stay in a place like this. But now he had no choice. Sir, please wait a moment. When the waiter saw the guest, he hurriedly went forward to greet him. He was not in a hurry to get a room. He took out a painting and looked at the man. The man quietly looked at the painting. When he saw the person in the painting clearly, a trace of imperceptible panic flashed across his eyes. He pretended to be nonchalant and asked, "Brother waiter, is this a warrant for arrest? What kind of heinous crime did the people above commit?" "Sir, this is a hunting warrant." A hunting warrant is similar to a warrant for arrest. However, a hunting warrant is issued by the Hunters Association while a warrant for arrest is issued by the government. The two have similar effects. The waiter made a comparison and did not pay much attention to it. He casually put it aside. A hunting warrant? When the sickly middle-aged man heard that, he knew something was wrong. The waiter arranged a room for him. He was not in the mood to eat and hurriedly entered the room. When he walked past the inn, he heard a few drunk men say, Did you see that? The Jade Capital Hunters Association has issued a hunting warrant. They said that an elder of the association has issued a reward of 100,000 gold coins to capture the fugitive of the Bloody Hand Trench. The Bloody Hand Trench was notorious on the mainland. They had long been in conflict with the Hunters Association. The hunting warrant stated that this fugitive of the Bloody Hand Trench named Xian Wuji was responsible for more than 100 lives. All over the country, wherever there were hunters, such hunting orders would be issued. The hunting warrant stated that as long as traces of this person were found, the local Hunters Association should be notified immediately. As long as a clue was provided, the elder who issued the mission would provide a huge reward of 100,000 gold coins. There was no need to capture him. They only had to provide clues and they could get the money. This was the first time such a good thing had happened since the beginning of time. The waiter and guests in the inn all opened their eyes wide and searched for the fugitive called Xian Wuji. The sickly man returned to his room. It was very simple and crude. There was a bed, a small wooden coffee table, and a bedding that smelled moldy. The sickly middle-aged man did not know whether to sit or stand. He took off the human skin mask on his face and revealed his original appearance. Because he had not seen the sun for a long time, the man's face was somewhat pale. His gloomy inverted triangular eyes were filled with resentment. This person was Xian Wuji, who had disappeared from Zhou State for a long time. Xian Wuji threw the human skin mask on his face in frustration. He slammed the table heavily, causing the teapot and teacups on the table to vibrate. After Xian Wuji broke up with the Dark Crown Prince, he became a street rat. He knew that things were bad when Yun Ba was not dead and Yun Sangxue was chased out of the Yun residence. He also knew that he was in Zhou State, which was the Yun residence's territory. Leaving Zhou State as soon as possible was the only way for him to escape. He hid from place to place and bought his way through. Finally he reached the southern border of Zhou State. Yun Songlong, don't think that you can catch me with this method. Humph, once I leave Zhou State and enter Tang Yuan's territory, you won't be able to do anything to me even if you have 1,000 methods. When I return to Grand Emperor City, I will definitely ask my father to kill everyone in the Yun residence. Xian Wuji was furious. He had never lived such a life in his life. Along the way he could not sleep at night. He could only stay in the most run-down inn, afraid that the Yun residence's spies would discover him. When he finally reached the border of Zhou State, he did not expect Yun Songlong to use the soldier hunting order. Not daring to expose his whereabouts, Xian Wuji could only hide in his room. He did not notice that the moment he entered the room, a bat perched on the roof beam quietly flew out. Chapter 428. Xian Wuji forced himself to stay in his room for a night. As soon as the sky brightened, he immediately set off. He planned to cross Zhou State's border and enter Tangyuan City today. The border between Tangyuan and Zhou State is just ahead. I failed this time, but at least that old man Yu Ba has been poisoned. As long as I return to Grand Emperor City and find someone to assassinate him, I'll definitely cause chaos in the Yun residence. Xian Wuji walked for half a day. He was nearing the border between Tangyuan and Zhou State. If he continued forward, he would reach Tangyuan's border city. He crossed a mountain and looked ahead. Suddenly his body stiffened. There was a cemetery in front of him. Where is this? Xian Wuji frowned. He vaguely remembered this place. This was the place where Zhou State, Tangyuan and later Qin had fought. It was also where Southern Cliff Town used to be. Xian Wuji, this is where thousands of brothers from the Yun family army and tens of thousands of people from Southern Cliff Town are buried. A cold voice that sounded like it came from hell made Xian Wuji shiver. This feeling? Yun Songlong. Xian Wuji was so scared that his face turned pale. He looked carefully and saw a few people standing in the middle of the tombstones. In the middle was Zhou State's Yun Songlong, a young girl and a young man. It was Yun Sheng and Zhongyi. Xian Wuji knew that something was wrong when the three of them appeared here. His face, which was still wearing the human skin mask, was already wet. Young City Lord Xian, you're quite cunning. You must have changed at least 3 or 4 masks along the way, Yun Sheng said softly when she saw his miserable expression. He master, you don't know how cowardly this guy is. If there's any trouble, he'll run away faster than a rabbit. Unfortunately, no matter how fast he is, he can't be faster than my babies, Zhongyi teased. A few bats immediately circled around him. It turned out that Zhongyi had received Yun Sheng's orders when Xian Wuji was still in Grand Emperor City to keep an eye on him. Xian Wuji had fled all the way from the jade capital of Zhou State to the southern cliff town. His whereabouts had never escaped the grasp of the Zhong family. Seeing the three of them appear together, Xian Wuji knew that something bad had happened. Even now, he still did not forget his identity as the young city lord of Grand Emperor City. Yun Songlong, what do you dare to do to me? If you hurt me, Imperial Grand Emperor absolutely won't let you off. TSK, what a useless piece of trash. Other than your Emperor Zhao level old man, what else can you do? The Zong personality mocked. Xian Wuji's father was a powerful figure, but it was a pity that he gave birth to such a son. Second uncle, we found him. You can decide how to deal with him. Yun Sheng glanced at her second uncle. Sheng, this is between me and him. You and Master Zong should step aside, Yun Songlong said in a low voice. When Xian Wuji heard this, he was secretly delighted. Yun Songlong was indeed stupid, just like he was in the past. There were clearly three of them and each of them was quite strong. However, Yun Songlong wanted to fight them alone. This was undoubtedly a suicide mission. Xian Wuji took out a short flute. Yuan Bupo used a long flute, but Xian Wuji's flute was much shorter. It was only 1/3 of the length. The flute was made of an unknown material, and it was blood red in color. The sound of the flute was like a blunt weapon cutting through glass, and it made one's scalp tingle. A blood-red summoning formation appeared beneath Xian Wuji's feet. Yun Xing had heard of the Dihong song before. Could be used to summon demonic beasts. Xian Wuji was a suspected summoner who used music to summon demonic beasts. Unlike Yuan Bupo, who had just turned 16, Xian Wuji already had his own demonic beast. However, during the battle at the southern border, his demonic beast was killed by a furious Yunba with a single punch. No one knew what kind of demonic beast he would summon today. The blood-red summoning formation turned into a huge pool of blood. Blood bubbled in the pool. An unknown demonic beast slowly poked its head out of the blood. It was a murderous earth-blood crocodile. The earth-blood crocodile crawled out of the pool of blood. It was a peak rank 9 earth-blood crocodile king. Its entire body was covered in ugly blisters, and sharp nails grew from its tail to its spine. Its stubby limbs were strong and powerful. Under its long mouth was a row of gleaming teeth. There was a bloodstone on the earth-blood crocodile king's forehead. The demonic beast let out a furious roar as soon as it appeared. Yun Sheng and Zong Yi's expressions changed. Both of them were summoners, and they could tell at a glance that Xian Wuji's demonic beast was no ordinary demonic beast. The demonic beast was surrounded by a bloody aura, and it looked ferocious and murderous. It was a blood cloud beast. Master, can your second uncle do it? That's a tamed blood cloud beast. It must have hatched not long ago. When it was still a cub, the people of Grand Emperor City used a special method to capture it and carefully raised it for many years. Zong Yi's gaze trembled as he recognized the blood cloud beast's true origin. There were many types of demonic beasts on the continent, but only blood cloud beasts were born from blood and emitted a bloody aura or magical element. Blood cloud beasts were hatched from the Duqian blood cloud beasts that floated over from the Duqian blood beast world. But depending on how long it took to hatch, the blood cloud beasts would be in different states. Adult blood cloud beasts were the hardest to kill. Once they were killed, their blood and bones would be excellent materials for refining one's body and equipment. Young blood cloud beasts were rare, and they were also the favorite demonic beasts of the continent. As long as they were properly raised, blood cloud beasts were much stronger than demonic beasts of the same rank. Grand Emperor City must have spent a lot of money to find a earth-blood crocodile. The appearance of the earth-blood cloud crocodile caused Yun Songlong's expression to change slightly. Seeing the shock on their faces, Xuan Wuji was even more pleased with himself. He even forgot about his current predicament. Xuan Wuji, you never would have guessed that I actually obtained a blood cloud beast as my summoned beast. All these years, I've meticulously used living humans and demonic beasts as food to raise this peak 9th level blood cloud beast. I don't believe that I can't tear you to pieces with this blood cloud beast. Yun Sheng and Zong Yi were filled with righteous indignation. What a deranged Xuan Wuji. He actually used living humans as food for demonic beasts. Not everyone had a heaven-defying divine artifact like the exquisite beast pagoda. Even if the magicians on the continent had a magical dimension, they still needed to feed demonic beasts. But most of the summoners were only fed some ordinary magical beast meat. Xuan Wuji actually used living humans to feed the earth-blood crocodile. If news of this were to spread, Grand Emperor City would definitely be criticized by the outside world. Xuan Wuji, you're truly inhumane. Unfortunately, I'm no longer the Yun Songlong of many years ago. Yun Songlong's strong body trembled, his throat moving as he shouted. Chapter 429. Xian Wuji hurriedly blew his blood flute. The blood jade on the earth-blood crocodile's forehead glowed. The blood cloud crocodile roared angrily and swung its whip-like tail at Yun Songlong. The blood crocodile was very fast. Its tail was like countless whips, slashing horizontally and sweeping sideways. Countless whips appeared and surrounded Yun Songlong. Yun Sheng and Zhong Yi watched without blinking. Yun Songlong's eyes darkened. He didn't panic at all. When he was young, he also had a young temperament. On the battlefield, he had the momentum to sweep away thousands of troops, sweeping everything before him. However, after the war a few years ago, he had been silent for more than 8 years. He had once sunk into depression, but once again pulled himself together. His temperament had been greatly tempered. Ever since Yun Xing taught him the Jade Marrow technique, he had practiced it in private and discovered that it was very mysterious. Especially when he was impatient, the Jade Marrow technique was like a clear stream that washed away the impatience in his heart. Yun Songlong wasn't in a hurry to attack the earth-blood crocodile. After seeing an opening in the crocodile, he threw a punch. His fist chi was like a thrown bomb, turning into a sky full of fist shadows. Bang, 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 bang. They landed on the blood cloud crocodile's back. Yun Songlong knew that the blood crocodile's skin was thick and that normal attacks were useless against it. His eyesight was incomparably sharp. Every punch landed on the crocodile's spine, the weakest part of its body. The blood cloud crocodile was hit repeatedly. Its long tail was swept to the side, and it let out a miserable cry. When Xian Wuji saw this, he turned pale with fright. Although he knew that Yun Songlong had recovered from his injuries, he thought that a person who had been crippled for more than 8 years, no matter how well he preserved his strength, would at most be the same as before. However, when he saw Yun Songlong attack today, he realized that he was gravely mistaken. Yun Songlong's advance and retreat were measured. He was completely different from the impatient Yun Songlong of the past. If this continued, even the blood cloud crocodile wouldn't be his match. Xian Wuji's heart sank. The hand holding the flute immediately changed. His thumb and index finger lightly pressed on the 2 holes on the flute. The sound of the flute became much deeper. Unlike Yuan Bupo's Di Hong song, which was like the sounds of nature, Xian Wuji's Di Hong song had a strange style. It carried a faint whining sound that made one's ears uncomfortable. The Di Hong song was divided into 9 chapters. The Xianyuan and Xianyuan families each occupied the first 6 chapters. The remaining 9 chapters could only be learned by the future city lord of Di Hong City. As the young city lord of Di Hong City, Xian Wuji had naturally learned the first 6 chapters of Di Hong song. However, his talent was average. Although he had learned the first 6 chapters, he was still unable to comprehend the essence of the 5th and 6th chapters. Today he was playing the 4th chapter of Di Hong song, Ghost Corpse Transformation. The Ghost Corpse Transformation could stimulate the evil thoughts in the hearts of humans and magical beasts, causing them to become violent and restless, greatly increasing their attack power. However, under the effect of the flute, the earthly blood crocodile, which had been beaten to a pulp, was covered with a layer of red light again. The earthly blood crocodile's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Its limbs became thicker in an instant. Countless sharp spikes grew out of its tail. Its speed was also much faster. It actually dodged all of Yun Songlong's attacks. Even worse, under the effect of the ghost corpse transformation, the earthly blood crocodile spat out a blood blade from its mouth. Yun Songlong's eyes narrowed. He condensed a pair of battle aura wings behind his back. He leaped lightly and dodged the blood blade. The blood blade brushed past Yun Songlong's shoulder, leaving a bloody wound. Second uncle attacked the blood jade on the earthly blood crocodile's forehead. Yun Sheng's eyes were sharp. She noticed that the blood jade on the earthly blood crocodile's forehead was as red as a hot iron when the ghost corpse transformation was played. Yun Sheng couldn't help but recall the magical beast belt she'd obtained from the leader of the Phantom Beast Corps. It seemed that the blood jade on the earthly blood crocodile's forehead had the same effect as the blood jade on the summoning belt. As a summoner, Yun Sheng was certain that Xian Wuji didn't have the ability to contract the blood cloud beast with his true strength. Therefore, it could only be said that Grand Emperor had used some special method to allow Xian Wuji to control the blood cloud beast. With Yun Sheng's reminder, Yun Songlong also noticed the blood jade on the earthly blood crocodile's forehead. After hearing Yun Sheng's words, Xian Wuji's expression changed greatly. He stared at the blood jade with a face full of apprehension. Yun Songlong snorted inwardly when he saw the change in Xian Wuji's expression. He circulated the Jade Marrow art. His battle aura and the Jade Marrow art merged together. Yun Songlong's battle aura wings flapped. With a whoosh sound, he had already turned into a shadow that was galloping away. With a crack, Yun Songlong shattered the blood jade on the earthly blood crocodile's forehead. When the blood jade shattered, Xian Wuji's expression changed drastically. The flute in his hand also broke into two. Second uncle beautiful. I want that beast. Teach it a lesson. I want it alive. Yun Sheng couldn't help but cheer. When Yun Songlong heard Yun Sheng's words, the corner of his mouth twitched. When the blood jade shattered, the earthly blood crocodile was already in a daze. Yun Songlong ignored the sharp barbs on the earthly blood crocodile's tail and picked up the 100-pound earthly blood crocodile. He was at the peak of the martial arts grandmaster realm. With his cultivation, lifting a 10,000-pound boulder was a piece of cake. This 100-pound earthly blood crocodile was like a piece of grass in his hands. Bang, bang, bang. Several consecutive bangs were heard. Yun Sheng and Zhong Yi's eyebrows twitched involuntarily. The vicious beast, which had eaten countless people, was being flung to the left and right by Yun Songlong. It was thrown dozens of times in a row, and the impact was enough to make it dizzy. If Yun Sheng hadn't said that she wanted to keep it alive, Yun Songlong would have turned it from a blood crocodile into crocodile meat paste. Xian Wuji was scared half to death by this scene. He even forgot to run away. Yun Songlong held Xian Wuji in one hand and the blood crocodile in the other. The blood crocodile had already fainted, but Yun Songlong had a sense of propriety. He held back a breath and threw it in front of Yun Sheng. Zhong Yi looked at the blood crocodile, who was foaming at the mouth, and pursed his lips. Master, you're not thinking of keeping it, are you? This thing is so ugly. You can't take it out. Yun Sheng thought to herself, Zhong Yi, what's wrong with your eyes? Do you think that your ugly dragon-clawed bat is better looking than this blood cloud beast? Besides, the blood cloud beast had a good bloodline. Xian Wuji obviously hadn't unlocked its true potential. If Yun Sheng placed it in the exquisite beast pagoda to recuperate for a while, this peak 9th rank blood cloud beast would be comparable to the dragon-clawed bat king. Zhong Yi, who said I wanted to contract it. I prepared this thing for someone else. Yun Sheng smiled. She nimbly controlled the blood cloud beast with her magic space. Yun Sheng hadn't even told the truth. It didn't matter if it was ugly or not. The key was that it had to be strong. Who was Yun Sheng? She didn't even want a peak 9th rank blood cloud beast to take up her summoned beast spot. Chapter 430. After Yun Sheng came into contact with Zhong Yi, she learned a lot about summoners from him. There was one point that Yun Sheng could not understand. That was, a summoner on the continent could only contract one magical beast before becoming a sacred beast summoner. They could also cancel the contract midway and contract more powerful magical beasts, but only one. Of course, a sacred beast summoner at Zhong Yi's level could also contract more than 2 magical beasts, but most of them would not do so. This was because the more magical beasts they summoned, the more magical power they would consume. Summoners at the sacred beast level and above would usually contract a magical beast that was at the commander level or close to the commander level. That way they would be able to control the magical beast and then use the magical beast to control other magical beasts. However, on the Boundless Continent, not to mention commander-level magical beasts, even peak-level 9 magical beasts were becoming fewer and fewer. Zhong Yi was already extremely lucky to have a Bat King as his summoner. However, this luck fell on Yun Sheng. That was a joke. Not to mention that when she was still a scepter summoner, she had already broken through the limits of a summoned beast contract. The magical power she consumed when summoning was much less than ordinary summoners. It was only about half of what other summoners consumed. This phenomenon was even more obvious after Yun Sheng obtained the summoning demon hand. As she familiarized herself with the summoning demon hand and her own magical cultivation increased, she now used only 1/10 of the magical power to contract and summon a magical beast. In the past, Yun Sheng might have coveted a blood cloud beast at the peak of the 9th level. However, ever since she had seen the divine beast Swan, she no longer had any interest in these magical beasts that were not even at the peak of the 9th level. However, Yun Sheng's lack of interest did not mean that the people around her were not interested. After Yun Sheng saw the Phantom Beast Core, she already had a new idea. Even if they were not summoners, they could still use magical beasts. She wanted to give the hunters of the Heaven Expedition Hunting Corps a makeover and let them have magical beasts that they could control. This way, under the same conditions, the Heaven Expedition Hunting Corps' fighting and defensive capabilities would greatly increase. This blood cloud crocodile was something that Yun Sheng had found for her second uncle. However, before this matter was completely put into practice, Yun Xing didn't intend to tell anyone about it. Seeing that Yun Songlong and the others had easily taken down the blood cloud beast, Xuanwuji knew that he was doomed. Yun Songlong, you can't kill me. Grand Imperial City will not let you off. Xuanwuji is still stubborn, he still wants to threaten Xuanwuji. Second uncle, don't listen to him. If you let him go, there will be endless trouble in the future. Yun Xing hurriedly reminded Yun Songlong when she saw that he did not continue to attack. If you kill me, the Yun residents and the Heavenly Hunting Corps will not have a good ending. Xuanwuji knew that Yun Songlong was most worried about his subordinates and the Yun residents. Xinger is right. If we let you live, Grand Imperial City will not let us off. Xuanwuji, 8 years ago, you almost caused the annihilation of the Yun family army. Today, I will use your blood as an offering to the Yun family army and the tens of thousands of residents of Southern Cliff Town. Yun Songlong's gaze turned sharp. He knew that if he hadn't been so indecisive back then, the Yun family army wouldn't have lost so many soldiers. He suddenly tightened his grip, his iron-like fingers strangling Xuanwuji's throat. Wait, don't you want to know the whereabouts of Yuan Shahua? Xuanwuji used the last of his strength to shout. When Yun Songlong heard this familiar name, he couldn't help but pause, a pained expression appearing on his face. The land under his feet was also the place where he and Yuan Shahua had spent countless beautiful days. However, those days were all shattered after the war. Yun Songlong's momentary pause gave Xuanwuji an opportunity. He pulled out a dagger from his sleeve and stabbed it towards Yun Songlong's throat. Second uncle. When Yun Xing saw this, she waved the magic scepter in her hand, and a wind blade shot out. Almost at the same time, a rock-like figure flashed out from the side and snatched Xuanwuji from Yun Songlong's hands. Like a cloud, he flew several feet away in a flash. Young General Yun, have mercy. The person who came was dressed in gray. His beard and hair were all snow-white, and the wrinkles on his face were piled together like old tree bark. However, his eyes were bright and full of wisdom. At a glance, it was impossible to tell how old he was. Behind him was a pair of transparent wings made of battle chi. The old man flew with incredible speed, grabbing Xuanwuji by the collar as if he were carrying a chick. Xuanwuji coughed dryly, but when he saw the newcomer, his ashen face lit up. Grand Elder, you're here. Grand Emperor City's Grand Elder. Yun Xing and Zhong Yi exchanged a glance, seeing the wariness in each other's eyes. At the same time, they sensed the overwhelming battle chi emanating from the other party. This do chi was comparable to that of Yun Ba and Tian Kezi earlier. This old man, who had appeared out of nowhere, was actually a martial saint expert. Grand Emperor City was a city away from worldly affairs. There were many experts hidden in the city. The city lord, Xian Sidian, was a peerless expert on the same level as Emperor Zhao. The Grand Elder was also a martial saint. Lu Changfeng's appearance caused the situation on the field to change drastically. Xuanwuji was ecstatic. He pointed at Yun Songlong. Grand Elder, you're finally here. Did father send you? They want to kill me. Lu Changfeng glanced at Xuanwuji with dissatisfaction. With just one glance, Xuanwuji didn't dare to make a sound. In the Grand Emperor City, there was a hierarchy of seniority based on strength. Although the city lord, Xian Sidian, was the city lord, he still had 4 Grand Elders under him. Usually, important matters in the city had to be discussed by the 4 Grand Elders and the city lord before a decision could be made. This time, Xuanwuji had accompanied Xian Mimi to train. Who would have thought that not only would the siblings fail but they would also cause trouble? Xian Mimi's face was disfigured by the spirit wildfire. After returning to Grand Emperor City, she was extremely distressed. Before her matter was resolved, the Marquis of Jiyuan sent a secret letter, saying that the city lord's son had caused a great disaster outside. The Bloody Hand magnate had been uprooted and the city lord's son was now wanted by Zhou State's Hunters Association. The city lord was in a terrible fix because of the siblings. On one hand, he comforted Xian Mimi. On the other hand, he ordered the Grand Elder to bring Xuanwuji by all means. After receiving the order, the Grand Elder transformed his battle chi into wings and rushed over. While he was looking for Xuanwuji, he had accidentally discovered Xuanwuji's Dihonga. That was why he had rushed over. As soon as he arrived, he saw Xuanwuji being captured and almost beaten to death. He hurriedly stepped in to save him. The Grand Elder ignored Xuanwuji's words. He first looked at Yun Songlong. Chapter 431. Yun Songlong was the man Yuan Shahua admired. Back then Yuan Xiaohua was the most outstanding genius of the Yuan clan. She was also the great elder's favorite descendant. Back then Yuan Xiaohua's matter had caused a huge commotion in the Grand Emperor city. The elders were also very curious as to what kind of person could cause a sensible child like Yuan Xiaohua to end up in such a state. Later, when they heard that Yun Songlong's fighting aura had been sealed by the city lord's son and that he had ended up crippled, everyone felt that it was a pity and assumed that a talented young man had fallen. The great elder also felt that it was a pity that Yuan Xiaohua had been expelled from the Grand Emperor city. Who would have thought that a few years later, there would be rumors that Yun Songlong had risen again? Today, when he saw Yun Songlong, he only took a few glances at him and secretly praised him in his heart. It was no wonder that Xiaohua liked Yun Songlong. This person had sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and a magnanimous temperament. His fighting aura cultivation had already reached the peak of the martial ancestor realm. Such a good man was indeed much better than a spoiled brat like Shen Wuji. It was a pity that such a talent was not from the Grand Emperor city. The great elder sighed and retracted his gaze. He then looked at Yun Sheng and the Zong family head. With one look, the great elder's white beard and long eyebrows could not help but twitch a few times. Good heavens, this was truly heaven-defying. Yun Songlong alone was already very impressive. The other two people from Zhou State in front of him also shocked the great elder. Let's talk about that man first. He looked to be in his 20s, not even in his 30s. But the terrifying magic beast beside him was actually a commander-level magic beast. This man was a summoner, and his strength was definitely not below that of a holy beast summoner. The other person was the sorcerer beside him. This little girl did not look very old and was probably a few years younger than Shen Mimi. However, her magic rank was at least that of a master sorcerer. The most terrifying thing was the few soul stones on her magic scepter. The first two in front of her was a 100-year-old mutated soul stone, the second was a demon soul stone from the elf clan, and the last one, there was also a soul stone that he could not determine its rank at a glance. A soul stone that even a martial sage could not see through. What rank was that soul stone? The first elder could no longer remain calm. It was said that Zhou State's power was declining day by day, but looking at it today, it was not declining day by day. It was simply the younger generation that would surpass the older generation to the extreme. Is this the Grand Emperor city's great elder? When Yun Songlong saw that the old man's battle chi was incomparably pure, he knew that the old man's skills were extraordinary. He had already missed the best opportunity to kill Shen Wuji. Yun Xingzi watched from the side and thought, it seems that second uncle still can't let go of Yuan Xiaohua. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lost his composure after hearing her name and missed the opportunity to kill Shen Wuji. Yun Xing shifted her gaze back and forth between Elder Lu and Shen Wuji as she tried to come up with an idea. Young General Yun, if the young city lord has offended you in any way, please forgive him. The city lord already knows of his actions during this period of time. In the future, Hongdi City will definitely send an apology gift. I hope that the residents of Yun and young General Yun will forgive us. Elder Lu also knew that Hongdi City was in the wrong this time, so even someone as arrogant as him had no choice but to put on a humble attitude. First Elder, the grudge between Songlong and Shen Wuji is no longer something that can be resolved with an apology gift. If an apology is useful, then wouldn't the lonely graves behind me have died in vain? If an apology is useful, then would the people who died tragically in the Jade capital, Xinyu, and my father who was nearly murdered be safe and sound? Yun Songlong's words were unyielding. He looked coldly at Shen Wuji as if he would snap his neck in the next second. Shen Wuji felt a chill in his heart when he was stared at by Yun Songlong. However, when he thought of the First Elder's arrival, he felt much more confident. First Elder, that brat wants to kill me. Quickly kill him. Shen Wuji only wanted to encourage the First Elder to kill Yun Songlong to prevent future troubles. Young General Yun, I'm very sorry, but I have to take the city lord away today. If you stop him, you will become the enemy of the entire Grand Emperor city. Although the Grand Elder knew that Shen Wuji was a good-for-nothing, the city lord only had one son, Shen Wuji. If he died, the city lord would have no successor. You can take him away, but you can only take away a corpse. It was at this moment that the young female magician who had been standing at the side without saying a word all this while spoke in a crisp voice. Her voice was very pleasant to the ears. In the spacious and quiet wilderness, it sounded like a gentle song. However, the words that came out of her mouth caused the First Elder's heart to involuntarily turn cold. The young female magician was the youngest among them, but when she spoke, Yun Songlong and the sacred beast summoner beside her did not speak. The First Elder couldn't help but be curious. Who exactly was this person? This young lady, you can't speak carelessly. Or are you saying that you have the confidence to snatch him from this old man's hands? The first elder's white eyebrows twitched. This young lady's appearance was very delicate and pretty, but her tone of voice was a bit unyielding. First elder, I don't have the confidence to snatch him from your hands, but I believe that you alone are definitely not a match for the entire continent's guilds and even the government. Do you know that the city lord you keep saying has another identity? He is the head of the continent's most notorious assassin organization, the Bloody Hand Tycoon? Yun Sheng finished speaking and took out a few letters. She had come prepared today and handed all the letters she took out to the first elder. The first elder opened the letters and read them. The more he read, the more gloomy his expression became. Xian Wuji stole a glance and his face turned green. Those letters were actually the secret correspondence between him and the red-robed man. The contents of these letters were mostly related to the Bloody Hand Tycoon's many transactions over the years. Most of them involved killing people and robbing them of their goods. The first elder understood that once these letters were made public, Xian Wuji's only fate was death. The first elder's hand shook and the letters immediately turned to dust. Yun Sheng was not in a hurry. She took out 2 more letters. First elder, you don't need to be in a hurry to destroy the evidence. I found a few large boxes of similar letters in the Bloody Hand Tycoon's headquarters. There were all kinds of letters and gold coins they collected from killing people in the past. These gold coins would flow into the limitless gold card opened in the name of City Lord Xian Wuji every year. If you don't believe me, you can go to the major banks or chambers of commerce on the continent to take a look. First elder, oh First elder, do you really think that I would hand over the most important evidence to you? I want to see whether Xian Wuji, the City Lord's son, or the reputation of Grand Emperor City is more important. Yun Sheng's information was naturally obtained through Zhou Qingxuan's investigation. Since she wanted to kill Xian Wuji, how could she not have a backup plan? When the first elder heard this, his beard blew and his face was filled with anger. Chapter 432. What a reckless little girl. Are you threatening me? The first elder was very famous in Grand Emperor City. Even the city lord of Grand Emperor City did not dare to speak to him in such a tone. Who would have thought that he would be ridiculed by a little girl today? Naturally he was furious. Threaten you? First elder, I'm afraid you've made a mistake. I'm threatening the Grand Emperor City. The Grand Emperor City is a famous city on the continent. For many years, it has enjoyed a good reputation on the continent. Who would have thought that it would be related to the Bloody Hand Tycoon for no reason? Let me calculate. In these few decades, how many murders have been related to the Bloody Hand Tycoon? How many of them have been related to famous hunters or the nobles of the 5 major countries? Tell me, what kind of scene would it be if others found out that behind the Grand Emperor City is the Bloody Hand Tycoon? Yun Sheng's eyes lit up as if he was thinking about the situation at that time. If the relationship between Grand Emperor City and the Bloody Hand Tycoon was exposed, the families of the victims and even some important people of the country would come looking for Grand Emperor City. Grand Emperor City was very powerful, but if they were to face the hunters and nobles of the various countries on the mainland, then, even the first elder did not dare to imagine the situation. Xian Wuji was so scared that his face turned pale. He looked at the first elder as if asking for help. The latter's face was gloomy and he did not say a word. If I were the city lord of Grand Emperor City, I would place righteousness before family. I would simply kill this unfilial son with one slap and then announce to the world that this was all the fault of this debauchee. After all, no one would collect debts from a dead person. Yun Sheng blinked. The first elder's grip on Xian Wuji's hand unconsciously tightened. Xian Wuji felt a chill crawl up his spine. Haha little girl, I almost fell for your trick. The first elder suddenly laughed loudly. His laughter rumbled as if thousands of magical beasts were running over together. As he laughed, all of his battle chi was released. Yun Sheng felt as if her chest was being squeezed and she felt a burst of stuffiness. Zhong Shi and Yun Songlong were also on guard. The 2 of them stood on either side of Yun Sheng. The first elder's eyes darkened. He looked at the 3 people who were on guard and could not help but shake his head. Little girl, you are not bad. You are quite brave and clever. It's a pity that you said something wrong just now. You're right. No one will collect debts from a dead person. If you have evidence, I can destroy your corpses. If I kill the 3 of you, those letters will be useless. Yun Sheng's expression also changed. However, she quickly calmed down. Great elder, it's true that you're a martial saint. However, are you certain that you can kill the three of us by yourself? It would be difficult for a martial sage to kill a sacred beast summoner, a magic master, and a martial ancestor in an instant. After the great elder finished speaking, he suddenly raised his hand. In his hand there was an additional jade pendant. When Yunxing saw the jade, she felt a sudden heat on her right arm. That feeling was as if her Shinnong medical bracelet had suddenly come to life. The material of that jade pendant was exactly the same as the Shinnong medical bracelet on her hand. They were both the legendary ancestral treasures of the Shinnong Yen clan, the Xinyuan 9 Dragon Jade. Yunxing was shocked. Shen Wuji was also overjoyed. It's the Emperor's totem jade. Ah, Shen Wuji, you're dead meat this time. Yun Songlong did not know the origin of the jade, but he knew that the first elder's item was no small matter. Grandmaster Zhong Ren, no matter what happens later, take Xing and leave as soon as you find the opportunity. Yun Songlong was vexed. If he had not hesitated, Xing would not have fallen into such a state. The first elder tossed the Emperor's totem jade into the air. The red jade was like a sharp arrow. It let out a low cry and shot into the air. The red jade flashed with a strange light. Then, as if it was burning, it suddenly turned into a ball of fire. The ball of fire was very beautiful, like a fire peony blooming in the air. Another nimble bird with a long neck like a swallow suddenly appeared in the flames. Its body was different from that of ordinary birds. Its feathers were rich and soft. There were fire-shaped patterns on its back and abdomen. It was very tall, about 6 feet to 10 feet. Its cry sounded like it was descending from the 9th heaven. People could not help but feel afraid. It looked incomparably arrogant. As soon as the bird appeared, the surrounding scenery was overshadowed. It was the most beautiful bird Yunxing had ever seen. Its body was covered in fiery feathers. Behind it were fiery plumes that looked like balls of fire. Its wings were long and slender. Wherever it flew, it was as if it had been set on fire. It was such a beautiful bird. But at the same time, it gave people a terrifying feeling that they had never felt before. That kind of pressure made everyone feel their skin tighten. It was as if they were not careful, their souls would be burned by the bird's heat. Yunxing also felt that kind of pressure. Yunxing's eyelids twitched. The elven hellfire brand on her forehead was hurting badly. As soon as the fiery red bird appeared, the dragon claw bat king that was originally beside the Zhong Yi let out a cry of horror. Commander-level magical beasts would all let out such cries. This fiery red bird was actually a legendary divine beast-level bird. But Yunxing quickly realized that this bird was not a real divine beast. Because this bird was different from the other birds. It was unable to speak human language. It also did not seem to have human intelligence. Instead, it just hovered in the air. This was a divine beast totem. It was not a real divine beast. It had part of a divine beast's power, but it could not stay in the outside world for long periods of time like a divine beast. It turned out that when the first elder went out this time, the city lord was worried that Shen Wuji would get into big trouble. If the Hunters Guild really stepped in, the first elder alone might not be a match for them. He thought for a moment, then had the first elder produce an Emperor Jade. The Emperor Jade was an extremely precious magic tool. It was left behind by the first city lord of Grand Emperor City, an outstanding expert on the level of Emperor Zhao. There were 4 Emperor Jades in total. Each one had the image of a divine beast on it. Each Emperor Jade could only be used once. It could only be used when Grand Emperor City was facing a real threat. The Emperor Jade that the first elder used today was a vermilion jade. Hidden inside was the illusion of one of the ancient divine beasts, the vermilion bird. As soon as the vermilion bird appeared, the pressure of a divine beast immediately appeared. The Zhong Yi cursed inwardly. No matter how he ordered the Dragon Clawbat King, it was useless. The hierarchy of magical beasts was clear. The Dragon Clawbat King had just advanced to commander level not long ago. When it saw a divine beast, it naturally trembled. Not only that, when the 3 people present felt the divine beast's pressure, they felt as if they had sunk into mud. Their 5 senses, 6 senses, and even their reactions were much slower. Chapter 433. You can only blame yourselves for choosing the wrong opponent from the start. The first elder shook his head. But, the first elder was slightly taken aback. He noticed that Yun Songlong, Zhong Yi, and Zhong Yi's magical beasts were more or less affected when facing the vermilion bird. But that female sorcerer didn't seem to be affected at all. The first elder naturally didn't know that Yunxing had already seen the real Tao Wu. She still had the imprint of the fairy hellfire on her body, and the summoning demon hand on her body also had the ability to resist the divine beast totem. Second uncle, let's split up. You hold back the first elder, Zhongyi, and I will think of a way to capture the vermilion bird. Yun Xing wasn't afraid of the vermilion bird totem. She didn't even care about the real Tao Wu, let alone a divine beast totem. Although she didn't know the origin of the Emperor's totem jade, Yun Xing faintly felt that it might have something to do with the Shinong medical bracelet she had injured. Perhaps obtaining the Emperor's jade would be beneficial to her. Yun Songlong looked at Yun Xing worriedly, and the latter gave him a don't worry look. First elder, I must kill Shen Wuji. If you stop me, I'll really fight to the death. Yun Songlong cupped his fists and bowed, his fighting aura gushing out again. Today I'll show you the difference between a martial ancestor and a martial saint. The first elder saw that Yun Xing and the others weren't willing to give up, and he was a little angry. Ignorant juniors, they actually wanted to compete with the vermilion bird totem. The first elder, Lu Changfeng, saw this and secretly mocked Yun Xing and the others for overestimating themselves. Yun Songlong didn't say anything else. The fighting aura wings behind him flapped, and he was already 100 meters in the air with the first elder facing each other. Two sides, Yun Xing and Zhongyi against the vermilion bird. Yun Songlong and the first elder were evenly matched. In an instant, killing intent surged, and the situation was set in stone. Facing the divine beast totem, Yun also put away her previous attitude of underestimation. She and Zhongyi were also prepared for battle. On the ground, a wisp of emerald green wind element floated under Yun Xing. Ever since she had become a master magician, her control over magic had become much better. It was as if she was riding on the wind as she floated in the air. Zhongyi jumped onto the back of the dragon-clawed Bat King. The vermilion bird totem was only a part of the mythological beast's power, and its true strength was only 1/10 of the mythological beast's true strength. However, even this 1/10 was enough to defeat Yun Xing and the others. Yun Xing was not in a hurry to make a move. She floated in mid-air. Unfortunately, the vermilion bird was of the fire attribute, and her centipede ant general was not good at aerial combat. The Zone persona chanted and waved a grayish-black magic scepter that looked like a withered tree. Black magic elements appeared beside the dragon-clawed bat. These magic elements turned into bats with sharp claws and teeth. The Zone persona waved his scepter, and the bats were all unstoppable. It was as if countless ants were attacking a giant elephant. The vermilion bird totem flapped its fiery wings, emitting a crisp and melodious bird cry. The fiery feathers behind it fluttered in the wind, and balls of flames rained down like rain. The rain of fire covered the sky and covered the earth. Once it touched the bats, they were like moths to a flame. The bats did not even have time to struggle before they were burned into ashes and fell to the ground. The wild grass on the ground was touched by the totem's divine fire, and it immediately turned fiery red. After the fire fell to the ground, it did not seem to be extinguished at all. Instead, it was as if oil had been poured on it, and it became more and more intense. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of bats were killed by the divine fire spat out by the vermilion bird. The Zhongyi complained. His Bat King was also a flying magical beast, but it was afraid of fire. Especially when the vermilion bird totem's fire was not ordinary fire. The Bat King had no choice but to dodge. The scorching flames made the Bat King stumble, and it looked very dangerous. On the other hand, Yun Xing did not feel uncomfortable in the raging fire. On the contrary, she felt that the fire magic elements in her body were like rain after a long drought, and there was only a slight warmth around her. This was the benefit of inheriting the fire of the fairies. Yun Xing, who had seen enough from the side, shouted, "Zhongyi, back off." She had already passed through the fire. Seeing the enemy attacking, the vermilion bird spat out a tongue of fire. "Master, be careful." The Zhongyi saw that Yun Xing did not dodge and actually ran straight into the flame. He was so frightened that his face changed. Shen Wuji, who was watching the battle on the ground, thought viciously, "Burn her to death. Burn the stinky girl of the Yun residence to death." This time, if it had not been for Yun Xing, his plan would have succeeded long ago. It was all because of this girl. He did not know what kind of medical skills she had used to save Yun Ba. Even Yun Songlong's hand was cured by her. Shen Wuji rejoiced in Yun Sheng's misfortune. Once a mortal's body touched the divine fire, it would be reduced to ashes in an instant. Who knew that in the next moment, Shen Wuji's smile would dry up? What did he just see? Yun Sheng collided with the flame head-on. The blazing red flame burned fiercely around her body, but not only did she not wail in pain, she even revealed a comfortable smile. On her forehead, there was a flame-like brand that illuminated her small face. At that moment she appeared abnormally enchanting. The vermilion bird let out a crisp cry, its melodious voice soaring into the sky. The sound was filled with joy and intimacy. After dozens of moves, the first elder and Yun Songlong heard the vermilion bird's strange cry and turned to look down. The vermilion bird flapped its fiery red wings. Not only did it not attack Yun Sheng, but it also circled around her non-stop. Its feathers fluttered and its wings fluttered, as if it was singing and dancing at the same time. How can this be? The first elder had never seen the vermilion bird totem react so strangely. The vermilion bird totem was a divine beast. It rarely got close to people. Even the city lord, who possessed the Emperor Jade, had never received the vermilion bird's special treatment when he used the Emperor Jade. But today the vermilion bird was so close to a female magician it had met for the first time. The first elder took a closer look and his old eyes suddenly lit up. He saw a bright red brand on Yun Sheng's forehead. The brand was brightly colored and shaped like a lotus flower. He looked at Yun Sheng's body. When the flames approached her, they retreated as if they had seen a king, not daring to take half a step closer. Elven hellfire. It was the elven hellfire that made all other flames in the world retreat. It was the last hellfire left behind by the fire elven queen. It could burn the sky and the sea, turning everything into ashes. Could it be that this female magician who came with Yun Songlong was a powerhouse who had inherited the elven hellfire? Chapter 434. The first elder's heart trembled and his hands slowed down. He never thought that he would encounter such a strong enemy today. Speaking of this matter, it was also a coincidence. Today Yunxing was also very lucky. Among the mythological beasts, according to their natural attributes, they were divided into water, earth, wind, and fire. Among them, mythological beasts of the same attribute were best friends. As a fire-type magical beast, Tao Wu had the best relationship with the true body of the vermilion bird totem. The vermilion bird totem recognized Yun Sheng's spiritual fire and thought that it had met its old friend Tao Wu. Naturally, it was happy to recognize her and happily danced around Yun Sheng. Although Yun Sheng didn't understand, she noticed that the vermilion bird totem had lost its earlier hostility. It kept circling around her and occasionally used its beak to touch Yun Sheng. Yun Sheng gathered her courage and reached out to touch the vermilion bird's head. Who knew that when her hand touched the vermilion bird's forehead, the vermilion bird would suddenly turn into a red light and burrow into the Shinong medical bracelet on Yun Sheng's wrist. Yun Sheng only felt the bracelet heat up for no reason. When she looked down at her bracelet, she found that there was an additional piece of red jade on it. The jade was slightly protruding, as if it was naturally embedded in the Shinong medical bracelet. It flowed with light and was very beautiful. In the sky, the first elder only saw the emperor totem enter Yun Sheng's hand and the vermilion bird totem disappear. His cheeks couldn't help but tremble. He had no idea what had happened down there. Xian Wuji's face was ashen. He didn't expect that the vermilion bird totem would suddenly disappear instead of turning Yun Sheng into ashes. How could the emperor totem jade disappear? Could it be that the emperor totem jade had betrayed Grand Emperor City and changed its master? The first elder and Xian Wuji's hearts were in a mess. They were both shocked and panicked. The emperor totem jade was a divine jade with spirituality. After it arrived in Grand Emperor City, it was carefully safeguarded by the successive city lords. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Grand Emperor City would never use the emperor totem jade. The emperor totem jade was extremely important to Hongdi City. This time, because of him, even the emperor totem jade had been taken away by the girl from the Yun Manor. This time, even if he could return to Hongdi City safely, his father would not let him off so easily. Yun Sheng was also bewildered, but when the vermilion bird emperor jade and her Shinong medical bracelet merged into one, Yun Sheng felt a change quietly take place in her body. She didn't have time to think about what changes the bracelet had brought to her body. Yun Sheng did not forget the current situation. The battle on the ground had ended, but the battle in the sky had only just begun. Xian Wuji was also worried about the battle in the sky. Xian Wuji understood that if the first elder did not kill Yun Songlong now, he would definitely die a horrible death this time. The first elder was indeed one of the top cultivators on the mainland. When he saw the fairy wildfire brand, he had already begun to suspect whether Yun Sheng was related to the fairy royalty of the immortal residence nation. He never thought that Yun Songlong would bring such a helper with him this time. Yun Songlong and the first elder began to fight again. A quarter of an hour passed and the two of them had already exchanged more than 100 blows in the sky. However, as the battle continued, Yun Songlong's inadequacies in the martial boundary were gradually revealed. There were a few times when Yun Songlong barely avoided the first elder's attacks and was surrounded by danger. Second uncle's situation was not good. She knew that there was a huge difference in strength between a martial saint and a martial ancestor, but she never thought that Yun Songlong would be so tenacious. Zhong Yi, prepare for a sneak attack. Yun Xing did not have any sense of propriety, justice, integrity, or shame in her mind, nor did she understand the rules of the competition. She glanced at Xian Wuji from the corner of her eyes, then looked at the two people still fighting in the sky. To her, second uncle's safety was more important than anything else. Just as she was about to make a move, she suddenly paused. He noticed that not far away, there was a veiled woman standing there. The woman had a graceful figure and her long black hair was casually decorated with a wooden hairpin. She wore a simple and elegant blue dress and held a guzheng in her hands. She stood alone and looked at the two black dots in the sky. Her eyes flickered with worry. Although her appearance could not be seen clearly, she left a deep impression on others. Who is she? The Zhong Yi glanced at Yun Sheng suspiciously. Yuan Xiaohua? Yun Sheng was only suspicious. At that moment, the battle in the sky changed again. The first elder suddenly exerted force and hit Yun Songlong's shoulder. Yun Songlong felt a sharp pain in his shoulder and knew that his shoulder bone had been shattered. Yun Songlong, you can also be considered a top figure. How many years has it been? No one has been able to withstand 100 of my moves. The more the first elder fought with Yun Songlong, the more he had a whole new level of respect for him. The difference in strength between a martial great master and a martial saint was not small, but Yun Songlong had relied on his skills to withstand 100 moves from him. If the two of them were not enemies, the first elder would be very happy to befriend Yun Songlong, an old friend of his. Unfortunately, you and I are enemies. Today I can only defeat you with my palm. The first elder sighed. As he spoke, his eyes turned cold and the dou qi in his body seemed to explode. It was obvious that he wanted to kill Yun Songlong. Yun Songlong was laughing and crying in his heart. He did not even have the time to look down at the battle on the ground. However, he believed that with Xing Er's intelligence she must have escaped from danger. He was afraid that he would die in the first elder's hands today. Unfortunately, he would never see her again. Just as Yun Songlong was feeling disheartened, he suddenly heard a sonorous and powerful sound. Army destroyer. The first elder and Yun Songlong were both startled and looked toward the ground. They saw a blue-clothed woman sitting alone on a low hill. A gentle breeze blew past. The woman's blue clothes seemed to merge with the blue sky. The woman's fingers were like spring onions as they gently plucked the strings of the zither. Her expression was unclear, but her eyes were fixated on the outstanding man in midair. Army Destroyer, the fifth movement of the Dihong song. It was a type of ancient war song. The sound of the zither stimulated one's will. Time seemed to have returned to more than 8 years ago. It was still on the battlefield, and there was a beautiful woman in blue who was playing a familiar tune. Although they were all Dihonga songs, when played by different people they were completely different. Unlike the song Xian Wuji played in front of Bai, and that day, Yuan Xiaohua's song was majestic and filled with endless emotions. It was like a soldier's wife, playing music in a distant place, waiting for the return of her husband who had joined the army. Xian Wuji's expression darkened. Yuan Xiaohua, you bitch. Chapter 435. He stepped forward to stop her, but Yun Xing and the others would not allow him to do as he pleased. Bat King, the Zong master ordered. The Bat King flapped its wings and was about to twist Xian Wuji's neck with its sharp claws. But at that moment, someone was even faster than the Bat King. Xian Wuji had never imagined that he would one day die at the hands of Yuan Xiaohua. Yuan Xiaohua waved her right hand, and the strings on her guzheng cracked. The strings were extremely sharp, and like an arrow, they pierced Xian Wuji's throat. Xian Wuji could only smell blood. His eyes widened. Even in death he could not believe that Yuan Xiaohua would kill him. Xian Wuji, when you threatened me with Bupo's safety back then, you should have known that you would end up like this. Yuan Xiaohua's face was as cold as ice under her veil. Back then she had been forced to write a letter to lure Yun Songlong to the southern border because Xian Wuji had used her younger brother, Yuan Bupo, as a hostage. He had also promised that he would not kill Yun Songlong. Who would have known that in that battle Yun Songlong would be crippled and suffer a fate worse than death? The Yun family army would suffer countless casualties. By the time Yuan Shahua rushed over, it was already too late. Yun Songlong hated Yuan Shahua to the core. Because of the pressure from her family, she had no choice but to leave the southern border of Zhou state with Xian Wuji. Because of this, she had missed the best opportunity to bury the hatchet with Yun Songlong. Yuan Shahua looked weak, but in reality she was the most unyielding. If she loved someone she would not abandon them. If she hated someone she would hate them to the point of death. She insisted on leaving Grand Emperor City. Over the years, every winter she would quietly wait for Yun Songlong at the Yun family army camp on the outskirts of Jade Capital, hoping to meet him. Unfortunately, Yun Songlong remained in the Yun residence. Because of a misunderstanding, the two of them were separated for 8 years. It was also a coincidence that the Oriole accidentally froze while washing clothes by the river. Yuan Shahua saw it, and a Dihong song saved the Oriole's life. All of this seemed to have been predestined. After killing Xian Wuji, Yuan Shahua's expression did not change. She looked up at the sky in disappointment, at the man she had not seen for many years. After 8 years she met Yun Songlong again. He was still as handsome and stalwart as before. He was still the good boy that the two of them had first met, but she was no longer the same as before. Yuan Shahua couldn't help but cry. Her tears wet her veil, but the strings under her fingers didn't relax in the slightest. Even with one string missing, Yuan Shahua's zither music was still surging with passion. This was indeed true to the ancient saying, evil has its retribution. When the first elder saw this scene he didn't show much anger. He already knew what would happen to Xian Wuji. Indeed, Xian Wuji had made a huge mistake this time. Although the Grand Elder had been ordered by the city lord to do his best to bring him back, he had even used the Emperor Totem Jade. However, he did not expect that the Emperor's Totem Jade would be snatched away by the opponent's female sorcerer. This was something that the Great Elder did not expect. Judging from Yun Sheng's situation just now, she must have something to do with the mythological beasts, and she seemed to have inherited the elven hellfire. Even Lu Changfeng, the Grand Elder of the Grand Emperor City, did not dare to offend a young lady who might have a close relationship with the elf tribe. The Grand Elder had a clear conscience for not saving Xian Wuji in front of such a person. In fact, the Grand Elder had his own selfish motives from the bottom of his heart. About a month ago, after Yuan Bupo brought the injured Xian Mimi back to the Grand Emperor City, he told the Yuan clan leader about his fortuitous encounter. He then set off to the place that Bayan mentioned, and he was lucky enough to find a sacred beast, the Chongming bird, that had just hatched. Since he had comprehended the 6th chapter of the Dihong song and gained the recognition of the sacred beast, the Chongming bird, Yuan Bupo's status in the Grand Emperor City immediately rose. Although the city lord of the Grand Emperor City had not made it clear, everyone in the city, including a few elders, unanimously believed that Yuan Bupo would become the city lord of the Grand Emperor City in the future. As such, it was no longer important whether Xian Wuji returned or not. From the bottom of his heart, the Grand Elder was also unwilling to bring Xian Wuji back to the Grand Emperor City. Otherwise, if he angered the Yun residents and revealed the power behind the Bloody Hand Tycoon, the reputation that the Grand Emperor City had built up over the years would be destroyed. That was why he pretended to compete with Yun Songlong and left Xian Wuji at the side. To him, Xian Wuji's death was within reason. However, if Xian Wuji was killed, it would be difficult for him to explain to the city lord and his wife. As such, killing Yun Songlong was imperative. However, when he saw Yuan Shahua, he could not help but sigh. He did not expect Yuan Shahua, who had left the Grand Emperor City many years ago, to live in Nanming Town. It was probably because of the Dihong song that she heard the sound of the flute and came looking for him. The sonorous ancient war song fell beside Yun Songlong's ears. He felt that his exhausted battle energy had been completely restored at that moment. He remembered. During the battle of life and death, when he and the Yun family army had narrowly escaped death, it was the same song. "Shahua, is that you?" Ah, there was an earth-shattering roar. Within Yun Songlong's body, a biting cold incomparable qi, like a sword, gushed out from his body. The first elder could not help but be shocked. This feeling, could it be that he was about to break through? Yun Songlong unexpectedly broke through at the critical moment of the battle of life and death. Yun Songlong's body, with the help of the 9-leaf sage ginseng, had always retained divine power in his body. Yun Songlong's breakthrough was earth-shattering. The advancement of a martial saint was earth-shattering, and could cause strange phenomena to occur. In the sky, there was a sudden clap of thunder, and countless thick clouds gathered toward Yun Songlong. The sky suddenly darkened, and on the ground, there were gusts of hurricanes, flying sand and stones. A faint violent thunderstorm force was constantly gathering in the clouds. Seeing this situation, the first elder was greatly alarmed, and did not dare to attack rashly. He suddenly landed on the ground, grabbed Yuan Shahua and dashed into the distance. Zhongyi, what's going on? Yun Sheng's eyes widened, looking up at her second uncle who was standing upright and unafraid in the sky. Master, your second uncle is about to advance, and it's the most powerful advancement among the martial saints. There are many ways to advance to the martial saint realm, and it is said that the most powerful way can attract the help of heavenly lightning and refine the body. This process is extremely dangerous, but if he can endure it, he is bound to become a top expert among the martial saints. The Zhongyi clicked his tongue in wonder, pulling Yun Sheng to one side. Heavenly lightning refining the body, this was not an encounter that ordinary people would encounter, it was a challenge from the strongest. Even though there had been many martial saints on the continent over the years, the only one who could attract heavenly lightning to refine the body was Yun Songlong. I can't afford to stay up late, I've been working hard recently, begging for monthly votes, I've seen everyone's rewards and votes. The reception at the hotel is not good, I'll thank you when I get home on Sunday. Chapter 436. When Yun Sheng heard this, she could not help but wonder inwardly. Second uncle's advancement and heavenly lightning body tempering was very likely due to the nine-leaf sage ginseng. When the nine-leaf sage ginseng had advanced to the nine-leaf divine stage, it had also attracted heavenly lightning. However, at that time, due to Yun Sheng and Yi Baiming, the sage ginseng had only absorbed a small portion of the lightning energy. However, it had later been used on Yun Songlong. When its divine power had dissipated, it had coincidentally coincided with Yun Songlong's advancement. That portion of the lightning energy had attracted several heavenly lightning bolts. Although she knew that heavenly lightning was beneficial, Yun Sheng could not help but tremble in fear when she thought of the lightning strike that she and Yi Baiming had encountered earlier. She was afraid that something would happen to her second uncle. Master, this process can only be undertaken by your second uncle alone. Others can help. Zhongyi saw that Yun Sheng's face was full of worry and continued to console her. Since ancient times, cultivators have always pursued strength above all else. To be able to reach the martial saint realm, apart from having outstanding talent, the most important thing is an unyielding heart. If your second uncle can overcome this, his future cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds. If he fails, it is also his fate. No one else can be blamed. Zhongyi was older than Yun Sheng and Yun Songlong combined. He had long seen through the various aspects of human nature. After he did this, Yun Sheng secretly clenched her fists and said, "Second uncle, this time you must endure it. Second sister-in-law is still waiting for you." The appearance of Yuan Sha painting was like a shot in the arm. It was also her appearance and her guqin music that had stimulated Yun Songlong's fighting spirit. Yun Sheng believed that if Yun Songlong could endure this time, he would definitely be able to reconcile with Yuan Sha painting. As she spoke, there was a roar between heaven and earth. A bluish-purple lightning bolt that resembled an old tree's withered vines surged out of the sea of clouds like a furious dragon. The lightning flashed and the grass and trees turned to ashes. That furious lightning bolt struck the top of Yun Songlong's head. A 7-foot-tall man stood between heaven and earth. Yun Sheng clenched her teeth and was very nervous. When Yun Songlong was struck by thunder flash, he felt as if all the blood vessels and pores in his body had exploded in an instant. Countless amounts of do qi were like thousands of tadpoles, crazily moving all over his body. He felt a tightness in his chest as if his body was going to explode in the next moment. His 6 orifices were bleeding because they could not withstand the power of the lightning. At that moment, Yun Songlong felt as if his limbs were about to explode, and he was about to die in the next second. On the verge of death, he seemed to see the Yuan Sha painting again. The scene where the two of them first met appeared so clearly in his mind. Earlier, at the most critical moment, Yuan Shahua's zither music had appeared again. It turned out that she had been waiting for him in Southern Cliff Town, the place where they had first met. It was like suddenly seeing a ray of light in the dark night. Yun Songlong's heart quietly changed. In his body, the power of the jade marrow technique and the power of lightning were fiercely fighting. The violent power of lightning that seemed like it would tear his body apart at any moment was slowly calmed under the effect of the jade marrow technique. The two forces merged together and gave birth to the most vigorous and pure do qi. Yun Songlong's clothes had already been reduced to ashes, and his skin had also been charred black by the power of lightning. However, when the two forces fused into a new force, his body once again glowed with an unprecedented vitality. His limbs and bones were full of vitality. His skin quickly fell off and quickly grew back. In just a moment, Yun Songlong was like a phoenix born from fire, breaking his body and being reborn. An unprecedentedly vigorous Do Qi surrounded him. The Do Qi wings behind him also changed shape, becoming wings like those of an eagle. Yun Songlong took out clothes from his storage ring and changed. Then, his Do Qi wings flapped and he swooped down from the sky like an eagle. At this moment, his aura was completely different from 15 minutes ago. The impetuous and arrogant Yun Songlong of the past seemed to have completely disappeared. Yun Songlong's gaze was calm and his breath was long and powerful. His eyes were also more steady and powerful. At this moment, his aura was actually somewhat similar to Yun Ba's. After 30 years, Zhou State finally had its second martial saint. The strange phenomenon of heaven and earth in the southern part of Zhou State meant that a new martial saint had appeared in Zhou State. The new martial saint of Zhou State was Yun Songlong of the Yun residence. This piece of news was quickly spread by interested parties. In a few days the news reached the Jade capital. When the news reached the Yun residence, Yun Ba was first stunned, but then he laughed heartily. Uncle Yun hadn't heard Yun Ba laugh in a long time. As he laughed, Yun Ba's eyes turned red. In the end he actually burst into tears. This gave Uncle Yun a fright. Yun Ba cried beside the river, "Yun Song, your master, I can finally hold my head up high. In the future, who dares to say that the Yun residence has no successor? My Yun residence's descendants are all stronger than the last." When the Emperor of Zhou State heard the news, he was pleasantly surprised but also annoyed. He regretted agreeing to Yun Songlong's resignation. Now Yun Songlong had left the imperial court and become a hunter. The Hunter Guild was overjoyed. The Heaven Extermination Hunting Corps was truly a group of two heroes. Not only did they have an expert on the level of Emperor Zhao, but they also had a new martial saint. The Hunters Guild immediately began to rope in the Heaven Extermination Hunting Corps. At this moment Yun Xing, Yun Songlong, and the others were still in the southern part of Zhou State. After Yuan Xiaohua was taken away by First Elder Lu Changfeng, Yun Xing and the others asked around in town and finally found out where Yuan Xiaohua had been living in Southern Cliff Town all these years. It was a very ordinary one-story house with simple decorations. According to the surrounding residents, a young woman had moved here 8 years ago. After the woman came to town, she lived alone and didn't have any friends or servants. She only hired an old maid in town to help her clean the house. However, the woman always wore a veil on her face, so her appearance and age were unknown. The woman rarely went out, but every year around winter she would go on a long journey. About half a year ago, a handsome young man came to look for the woman. According to the old maid who helped clean the house, the young man did indeed call the woman Big Sister. Second uncle, that person must be Yuan Xiaohua. So she left Grand Emperor City long ago and lived here alone. Yun Sheng couldn't help but sigh. A young and beautiful woman had abandoned her family and lived in such a simple place alone for 8 years. Yuan Xiaohua's feelings for Yun Songlong could be said to be extremely touching. Yun Songlong didn't say anything. He stood in the room for a day and a night. He only came out on the second day. Yun Songlong told Yun Xing and Zhong Yi about a shocking decision. Second uncle, you said you wanted to go to Grand Emperor City personally? Yun Xing also knew that Yuan Xiaohua's appearance this time had caused waves in Yun Songlong's heart, which had been silent for many years. Chapter 437. On this day Yun Songlong thought about many things. He looked around the house and saw that Yuan Xiaohua had left behind a book and a piece of paper. He imagined that she had been waiting in this simple house for the past 8 years. Unfortunately, he had been living in hatred for her. Yuan Xiaohua had been taken away by the Great Elder because he wanted to pursue the matter of her killing Xian Wuji. Xian Wuji had been killed by Yuan Xiaohua. She had done this for Yun Songlong. She knew that Yun Songlong hated Xian Wuji to the core. As long as Xian Wuji did not die, the Yun family army and the humiliation of the Yun residents would not be forgiven. As long as Xian Wuji did not die, her 8 years of grievances would not be forgiven. Therefore, in order to make Yun Songlong let go of the past, Yuan Xiaohua was willing to risk being punished by the city to kill Xian Wuji. Her return to the Grand Emperor City this time would not bode well for her. When Yun Sheng and Zhong Yi heard this, they fell silent. Second uncle, I will go with you. I will go with you to find second aunt. Yun Xing suddenly said with a smile. Hee hee, how can I miss out on such a lively event? Master, I will go with you. With my Dragon Claw Bat King around, the journey to the Grand Emperor City will be much more convenient. The Zong persona patted his chest and laughed. However, Yun Songlong was unwilling. Xing, this matter started because of second uncle. It has nothing to do with you and Master Zong persona. Father's body has not recovered yet and I am worried about leaving him alone in the Jade Capital. Second uncle, we're also worried about you going alone. As for old General Yun's body with the medicinal herbs sent by the Dark Crown Prince, it should not act up for a while. The mission of the Spring of Life has not been released for long, so there will be no news for a while. Yun Xing insisted on not letting Yun Songlong go alone. She had long been cautious and released the news of Yun Songlong's breakthrough. A new martial sage of the Great Zhou dynasty. Moreover, he was a martial sage who had been tempered by heavenly thunder that was rarely seen in 100 years. Such a title would definitely cause a huge uproar whether it was in the Great Zhou dynasty or in the Grand Emperor City. His reputation would spread before he arrived. At this moment, whether it was Zhou State or Dihong City, they would probably have some misgivings about Yun Songlong. The residents of Yun would be even less of a problem. The three of them were in a deadlock for a while. Yun Xing had no choice but to come up with an idea. Second uncle, you have to take me with you. A few days ago, I received news that Xian Wuji's younger sister, Xian Mimi, was disfigured in an accident. I am a doctor and my medical skills are among the best in the continent. If you can take me with you, maybe it will be good for saving second uncle and sister-in-law Xu. Xian Mimi's injury probably wouldn't heal for a while. Yun Xing had no way to cure her face, but it was a good excuse. Yun Songlong hesitated for a moment, but in the end he couldn't stand Yun Xing's dawdling and agreed to her request. As for Zong Yi, he was considered one of Yun Xing's men. Yun Songlong really couldn't control where he went. The three of them stayed in southern Cliff Town for another 2 days. During this time, Yun Songlong wrote a letter to the Heaven Extermination Hunting Corps and asked Zhou Quan to keep an eye on the hunting corps. In order to prevent old General Yun from worrying, he only said that he was going out on a mission and that Yun Xing and Zong Yi would be accompanying him. Yun Xing took advantage of these 2 days to train the Earthblood Crocodile. Yun Xing first took apart the summoning belt that came from Zhou State. She carefully analyzed the various materials used to make the summoning belt and the magic arrays on it. With the help of the summoning hand, everything went smoothly. Yun Xing even used Yun Songlong's blood to fuse with some magical materials to create a magical beast ring that was meant for personal use. This ring had a magic space on it. Even if one wasn't a summoner, they could still control this magic beast ring. Yun Songlong followed Yun Xing's instructions. After wearing this magic beast ring, he realized that he could really control the Earthblood Crocodile. This kind of magic beast ring could control different magic spaces and magic beasts according to the strength of the owner. For a warrior sage like Yun Songlong, controlling a peak level 9 magic beast was not a problem. Wow, Master, you're too amazing. If this kind of ring can be sold on a large scale, it would be amazing. After witnessing Yun Xing's new invention, even Zong Yi was full of praise. He had been a summoner for so many years, but this was the first time he saw someone who could allow a warrior to control a magic beast freely. Master, you should be more careful. If the news that you created this kind of magic beast ring reaches the Zhou State, it would be bad, Zong Yi reminded Yun Xing. He thought that although the magic beast ring was good, it shouldn't be sold on a large scale. After all, it was acceptable to use the magic beast ring on a warrior sage like Yun Songlong. However, if everyone had one, it wouldn't be good. So what if it's the Zhou State? Do you think your master looks like someone who fears the Zhou State? Yun Xing's face was full of arrogance. If this kind of arrogance was on someone else, Zong Yi might have ridiculed them. However, when Yun Xing showed it, it became a kind of confidence. Zong Yi laughed involuntarily. He suddenly realized that his master did indeed have the ability to be arrogant. He could roughly guess what Yun Xing was going to do next. It was very likely that she was going to rearm the Heaven Extermination Hunting Group. She was going to arm them from head to toe. For example, last time, his master had taken out some weapons and armor without saying anything and distributed them to the 50 to 60 core hunters of the Heaven Extermination Hunting Group. Those weapons looked ordinary, but the moment the hunters used them, they realized that those weapons were extraordinary. They could easily break gold and jade, and their defensive power was very strong. Pills, magic tools, weapons, magic beasts and magic rings. Yun Xing was like a huge treasure trove. Her secrets and potential were endless. Even Zong Yi, who had lived for 60 to 70 years, couldn't help but be jealous. They were all raised by the same parents. How could his little master be so monstrous? Just the things that his little master had done in the past few months were already heaven-defying. Not only did she create the praise of the moon goddess, which could change a person's magic body, but she also created a holy pill. Now she even had the magic beasts and magic rings. It had to be known that these things were the giants of the continent. The Dharma Temple, the Zhou State, the Medicine Emperor Pavilion. Any one of them was an existence that could shake the continent. But so what? Wasn't the Medicine Emperor Pavilion subdued by his little master in the end? Zhong Yi couldn't help but feel lucky that he had chosen to follow Yunxing back then. Otherwise, if he were to become her enemy, not to mention an open competition, just his master's various secret tricks would be enough to make him suffer. After a few more days, when I return to the Jade Capital, I will create a magic ring for every member of the Heaven Extermination Hunting Group. For so many years, the Zhou State has monopolized the resources of summoners on the continent. It's time to break this monopoly. Yunxing didn't have a good impression of the Zhou State. This was even more obvious when she found out that her mother, Hu Jiuxing, had offended a certain important person in the Zhou State and was hunted down for her life. In particular, most summoners were arrogant and rude. Even Zhong Yi had said that a large part of the reason why he had traveled around the continent was because he didn't get along with the people of the Zhou State. After everything was prepared, Yunxing, Yun Songlong, and Zhong Yi set off for the Grand Emperor City. Chapter 438. As for the whereabouts of Grand Emperor City, it was thanks to Zhong Yi. The outside world had never known the true location of Grand Emperor City. At that time, the Zhong persona was smart enough to order a bat grand disciple to follow the Great Elder. The bat had tracked them all the way and brought them a rough route to Grand Emperor City. A few days later, in the City Lord's Manor of Grand Emperor City, Xian Wuji's corpse was placed in a coffin. There was a gash on his throat, the bones of his throat shattered. Xian Wuji's eyes were open, his face filled with grievances. First Elder and the City Lord's family were all in the hall. A servant girl supported First Madam as they walked out. Wuji, my poor son. In Grand Emperor City, the City Lord's wife, Madam Bing, cried her heart out when she saw her son's corpse. Grand Emperor City's City Lord, Xian Xidian, was in his 40s and had 2 wives. Xian Wuji was the first wife and the son of Madam Bing. Xian Mimi, who had been disfigured and returned to Grand Emperor City, was the daughter of the younger wife, Madame Lan. Xian Sihai didn't have many children, only 1 son and 1 daughter. Xian Wuji was his only son. He had carefully raised him since he was young, hoping that he would inherit his position as city lord in the future. Unfortunately, Xian Wuji's talent was average, and because of Yuan Xiahua, he had a grudge with Zhou State's residents of Yun. Although he had crippled his rival in love, Yun Songlong, in the end, his own Dharma soul had been injured by Yun Ba. For many years, his cultivation had not improved, and his reputation in the Grand Emperor City had also plummeted. Xian Sihai had tried many times to persuade Xian Wuji to stop causing trouble for the Yun estate. However, Xian Wuji was unrepentant. After going out with Xian Mimi, he colluded with Tang Yuan and ended up like a rat on the street. Although he resented his son for not living up to expectations, Grand Emperor City's City Lord still felt sorry for his only son. He was worried that Xian Wuji had caused trouble in Zhou State, so he had sent First Elder to search for Xian Wuji's whereabouts with the Totem Emperor Jade. Unexpectedly, not only had they failed to rescue him, the Totem Emperor Jade was missing, and his son Xian Wuji had been killed. It was Yuan Xiahua who had killed Xian Wuji. Along with Xian Wuji's corpse were the Grand Elder and the expressionless Yuan Xiahua. "You bitch, you killed my son." After Madame Bing heard the Grand Elder's explanation, she stepped forward to beat Yuan Xiahua. Madame Bai hated Yuan Xiahua to the core. She raised her hand and slapped Yuan Xiahua twice. Yuan Xiahua did not struggle. Her hair was messed up and her face was swollen. Yuan Xiahua did not say a word. "First Madam, please show mercy." The Yuan couple, who were also Yuan Xiahua's parents, rushed over after hearing the news. When they found out that their eldest daughter Yuan Xiahua had returned to Grand Emperor City, they didn't expect that Yuan Xiahua would kill Xian Wuji, so they rushed over. Sarah. Yuan Xiahua's mother hadn't seen her daughter for more than 8 years. She had always doted on her eldest daughter the most. Seeing her daughter in such a state, she felt as if a knife had pierced her heart. She hugged her daughter and cried. Yuan Xiahua was petrified and allowed her mother to hug her. "Yuan Buju. Your daughter killed my son." she will pay with her life. Madame Bai was also from a prominent family in the city. Back then, when Yuan Xiaohua broke the engagement and caused Shen Wuji to lose face in Grand Emperor City, Madame Bai hated the Yuan family. But at that time the elders and Yuan couple were protecting her. She could only ask the city lord to chase Yuan Xiaohua away. Who would have thought that 8 years later Yuan Xiaohua would kill her son? Xiaohua, what is going on? You really? Yuan Buju's expression was ugly. He didn't expect his daughter's hatred for Shen Wuji to be so deep. Although Shen Wuji had committed many evil deeds, he was still the son of the city lord. The Grand Elder had witnessed Yuan Xiaohua killing Shen Wuji with his own eyes. This time, even if he wanted to protect his daughter, he was powerless. He deserved to die. Yuan Xiaohua's voice was cold. There was no remorse in her eyes. If she had known that Shen Wuji would harm so many people and caused Song Lang to suffer for 8 years, she would have killed him long ago. You bitch. You're Wuji's fiancé. It's one thing for you to sleep with a wild man outside, but you even killed my son. See, I want her to die with Wuji. The city lord's wife said viciously. She hated Yuan Xiaohua. This woman had harmed Wuji for his entire life. Madame Bai, what do you mean by that? If the young city lord hadn't been so aggressive, Xiaohua wouldn't have done this. Now that she is dead, I hope the city lord can spare Xiaohua's life on account of our many years of friendship. When Madame Yuan heard that Yuan Xiaohua was going to be executed, she hugged her daughter in fear and refused to let go. Life? If she lives, wouldn't my son have died in vain? Not only her but that adulterer as well. That adulterer with the surname Yun, I want him to pay for Wuji's life. Madame Bai pointed at Yuan Xiaohua and said word by word. It has nothing to do with Yun Songlong. I will take responsibility for my own actions. If you want to pay with your life, then I will be buried with your son. Since I, Yuan Xiaohua, have returned, I will take responsibility for my own actions. Either way I will die. Yuan Xiaohua's face turned red as she struggled free from Madame Yuan. Enough, all of you shut up. City Lord Shen Sidian rebuked angrily. Do you think this matter hasn't blown up enough? Lock Yuan Xiaohua in the dungeon. Grand Elder and Yuan Buju stay behind. Everyone else get out. City Lord Shen Sidian waved his hand and the servants hurriedly carried Shen Wuji's corpse away. City Lord, this matter can't be blown out of proportion. I've already received news that Yun Songlong has made a breakthrough. Furthermore, it is the heavenly lightning body tempering, the rarest breakthrough in the martial saint realm. This child's future strength cannot be underestimated. When the first elder saw the heavenly phenomenon that day, he already knew that something bad was about to happen. However, he didn't expect that Yun Songlong would be able to endure the heavenly lightning body tempering and become Zhou State's new martial saint. After hearing Grand Elder's words, the city lord and Yuan Buju had different thoughts in their hearts. Yuan Buju sighed. If he had known earlier, he would have risked his life to let his daughter, Yuan Xiaohua, and Yun Songlong be together. A martial saint who had undergone the heavenly lightning body tempering was a top-notch existence among martial saints. How old was Yun Songlong this year? He was only in his early 30s. If he could become a martial saint at such a young age and undergo the heavenly lightning body tempering, then it was very likely that he would become a legendary martial god in the future. Compared to Shen Wuji, who was a spoiled brat, Yun Songlong was like heaven and earth. The city lord's heart was in turmoil. On one hand, he hated Grand Elder for not doing a good job and causing his only son to be beheaded. On the other hand, he hated Yuan Xiaohua for causing his son's death. However, Yun Songlong's rise had already become a reality. The city lord could no longer oppose the Yun mansion. Chapter 439. Buju, what do you think about this matter? The city lord of Grand Emperor City was cunning. He wanted Yuan Xiaohua to pay for Shen Wuji's life, but he did not say it out loud. Instead, he pretended to ask Yuan Buju. Yuan Buju and Yuan Xiaohua were the same. Both father and daughter looked kind, but in fact they were extremely unyielding. Yuan Xiaohua had killed Shen Wuji this time, so logically speaking she should pay for it with her life. Yuan Buju closed his eyes in pain and said with a trembling voice, Buju, I'm sorry. Men, bury Yuan Xiaohua alive in 7 days. Madame Yuan returned to the Yuan residence in a daze. Yuan Bupo and his second sister Yuan Shanshan, who were waiting in the residence, quickly gathered around her. Mother, how is it? Have you seen eldest sister? The 3 members of the Yuan family were very close. When they heard that eldest sister had killed Shen Wuji, they were very anxious. The city lord said that he wants your eldest sister to be buried with him, Madame Yuan sobbed. What? Shen Wuji, that bastard, deserved to die. Why should he want eldest sister to be buried with him? Yuan Bupo was furious. He had said that he wanted to go with his parents, but his father, Yuan Buju, was worried that he would be reckless and did not allow him to go. That's right. We can't let them bury eldest sister alive. What time is it now? If they want to bury her, they should let Shen Wuji's women be buried with her, Yuan Shanshan said angrily. Shen Wuji was not a good person at all. After eldest sister left, he used the excuse of drunkenness to harass her a few times, but was chased away by her younger brother. Yuan Shanshan felt that Shen Wuji deserved to die. But what can we do? Your eldest sister did kill Shen Wuji. Why is that child so foolish? It has been so many years but she still can't let it go. Madame Yuan wiped her tears. I heard that Yun Songlong was also there. I think eldest sister must have done it for him, Yuan Bupo said. Eldest sister had a stubborn temper. When she left Grand Emperor City, she had already let go of all her grudges. Needless to say, she did it this time because of Yun Songlong. Eldest sister is so foolish, Yuan Shanshan sighed. Is it worth it for her to do this for that man? When the first elder returned, he also brought back news that Yun Songlong had broken through and become the new martial saint of Zhou State. Big sister's face was ruined, and the other party definitely didn't want her anymore. However, she was willing to take on the crime of betraying the city for him. No, I have to save big sister, Yuan Bupo was annoyed. No matter what, he could not watch his elder sister being buried alive. Bupo, don't be rash. You're in an awkward position right now. You can't be rash. Now that Shen Wuji is dead, you'll most likely inherit the position of city lord. If anything happens to you, the people from the city lord's mansion will definitely use this to threaten you. Lady Yuan wiped the corners of her eyes. The relationship between the Shen Yuan and Shen Yuan clans was very special. They seemed to be very close, but in the 100 years since the establishment of the Grand Emperor City, there had been a lot of internal strife between the two clans. Especially in the matter of the succession of the city lord, it was even more mutual deception. Back then, Xian Cidian and Yuan Buju were both popular candidates for the position of city lord. However, Yuan Buju fell in love with Lady Yuan, who was born a commoner, while Xian Cidian abandoned his childhood sweetheart and chose Lady Bai, who had a more honorable status. That was how he successfully seized the position of city lord. This matter had been a burden in Lady Yuan's heart for many years. Now that Shen Wuji was dead, Yuan Bupo became the popular candidate. Lady Yuan was unwilling to let her son get into trouble at this critical juncture. Yuan Bupo opened his mouth and wanted to say something. However, his second sister Yuan Shanshan shook her head at him. Yuan Bupo understood tacitly. At night, the Yuan mansion was silent. After Yuan Buju returned from the city lord's mansion, he had a discussion with Lady Yuan. Lady Yuan sobbed softly, "It's all my fault. If it wasn't for me back then, if Yuan Buju had not given up the opportunity to marry Lady Bai, who was from a wealthy family in the city, and married her, he would have been the city lord by now. He would not have had to live by Shen Xitian's face and Xiahua would not have fallen to this state today. Look at you. What are you talking about? If it wasn't for you, where would Xiahua come from? This is also the child's own choice. You can't blame anyone else. The underground prison is gloomy and there is only one escape route from the sewer. After a few days, go to the underground prison and take a look. It can be considered as the last time you see that child." Yuan Buju comforted his beloved wife. His gaze seemed to have drifted outside the window. Outside the window, Yuan Bupo and Yuan Shanshan held their breaths. They bent their backs and slipped out of the mansion. The Yuan siblings had pretended to compromise in order to appease their mother. Tonight, when they heard what their father said, they knew that the city lord's mansion was determined to kill their sister. Therefore, they discussed and went to rescue Yuan Xiahua under the cover of the night. To Yuan Bupo, he did not care about the city lord's position. He only wanted to save his sister. At most, he would leave the Grand Emperor City. A smiling face flashed across Yuan Bupo's mind. The woman's smile with dimples was like the brightest star in the sky. He could not help but fall into a daze. "Third brother? Why are you in a daze?" Yuan Shanshan saw that Yuan Bupo was still in a daze. She could not help but become impatient and pushed Yuan Bupo. Recently, her little brother had been acting weird. He used to be cool and handsome. Recently, he would be in a daze from time to time. It was as if he had become a fool after leaving the Grand Emperor City. "Second sister, Are you sure that the sewer of the underground prison is on the west side of the city lord's mansion? Yuan Bupo's handsome face turned red as he collected his thoughts. Are you still doubting your second sister? Yuan Shanshan had a face of confidence. Actually, she did not know why there was an extra map of the city lord's mansion's underground prison in her room. However, it was a matter of life and death. She could not be bothered to investigate so much. She had to think of a way to save her sister first. Both the brother and sister were top-notch fighters in the city. Although the city lord's mansion was heavily guarded, the siblings still managed to sneak in. The underground prison was dark and humid. Anyone who entered the underground prison would have their dookie and magic sealed. Their sister's body was not well. In such an environment, sister. The two of them saw the torture rack in the underground prison. Their sister was tied up at the side. Her long hair was scattered and her clothes were covered in blood. Her limbs were also heavily shackled. At the side there was a blood-stained whip and a bucket. Yuan Bupo only felt a surge of anger in his heart. Yuan Shanshan hurriedly cut off the shackles and put down her sister, Yuan Xiaohua. Yuan Xiaohua had already fainted. After a while she woke up. Is it Madame Bai? That bitch. Yuan Bupo looked at his sister. They actually dared to use torture on his sister. The Yuan clan was also a prominent clan in the city. According to the city's laws, even if they had committed a serious crime, they should not be punished so severely. It was obvious that Madame Bai was the one who did it. It was not enough to bury her sister alive. She had to be humiliated before she died. Yuan Bupo got up and wanted to question Madame Bai. However, he was stopped by Yuan Xiaohua. Chapter 440. She said weakly, "What are you doing here?" "Big sister, we're here to save you." Yuan Shanshan supported Yuan Xiaohua. "What happens after you save me?" Yuan Xiaohua asked hesitantly. "Of course we'll send you away from Di Hongqing and find Yun Songlong. Back then you didn't dare to find him because of Xian Wuji. But now Xian Wuji is dead and Yun Songlong has broken through. As long as we send you to Zhou State, the people of Yun residence will be able to protect you." Yuan Bupo saw that his big sister's eyes were wandering. Yuan Xiaohua looked at her second sister and third brother blankly. She broke free from Yuan Shanshan's hand and said, "Don't be silly. I won't leave Di Hongqing. Born as a citizen of Di Hongqing, dead as a ghost of Di Hongqing. This is my fate." The Yuan siblings didn't expect that their big sister wouldn't appreciate their kindness. Yuan Xiaohua's state of mind had changed greatly after being locked in the dungeon for a few days. The injuries on her body were caused by Madame Bai. After Madame Bai insulted Yuan Xiaohua, she even mocked her. Those vicious words pierced Yuan Xiaohua's heart. Madame Bai told Yuan Xiaohua that Yun Songlong had broken through to martial sage. This should have been good news, but Madame Bai laughed and said, "That wild man is quite lucky. Unfortunately, your luck isn't. In a few days you'll be buried with Wuji. As for the man you've been thinking about for so many years, you'll soon forget about him. Look at your wretched appearance. I feel disgusted just by looking at you." Yuan Xiaohua's face was scratched by the cold water and the whip. It became even uglier. She didn't even want to look at her own face. With this face, even if they saved her, she wouldn't have the face to see Yun Songlong. He was a high and mighty martial sage. As for her, she was already a pile of mud. She didn't deserve him. Big sister. Yuan Bupo and Yuan Shanshan panicked. Big sister. Yuan Bupo and Yuan Shanshan didn't expect their big sister to reject them so decisively. "You can leave." Yuan Xiaohua didn't say anything else. The gentle and considerate Yuan Xiaohua from many years ago was no longer there. After walking out of the dungeon, Yuan Bupo and Yuan Shanshan fell silent. Yuan Bupo walked towards the city gate without another word. "What are you doing?" Yuan Shanshan hurriedly stopped him. "Needless to say, I'm going to look for Yun Songlong." Yuan Bupo understood his eldest sister's stubborn temper. Unless Yun Songlong came to persuade her, she would not leave even if their parents came. Without the city lord's token, leaving the Grand Emperor city without permission is a crime of betrayal. Besides, do you know where Yun Songlong is? It will take at least a month for Di Hong City to go to Zhou State. Eldest sister will be executed in a few days. Don't tell me you want to bring Yun Songlong to collect her corpse. Yuan Shanshan was also very anxious. Are we just going to watch big sister get executed? Yuan Bupo was discouraged. His eyes suddenly lit up. I've got it. I can release Little Red and Blue. It can travel thousands of miles in a day. It will only take a few days to reach Zhou State. Little Red and Blue was the holy beast summoned beast that Yuan Bupo found on the Ice Fire Island under Tao Wu's orders. The summoned beast could leave the city without anyone knowing. It would not violate the city lord's token. Yuan Shanshan listened and agreed with Yuan Bupo's idea. The two of them secretly released Yuan Bupo's summoned beast under the cover of the night. They anxiously waited for Little Red and Blue's reply. Yun Sheng and the rest who set off from Zhou State traveled day and night. Zhong Yi asked the Dragon-Clawed Bat King to find 2 fast bats. They followed the Dragon-Clawed Bat King's directions and flew towards the west. As they were worried about Yuan Shahua's safety, they traveled day and night. They only rested for a short while on the bat's back at night. Unknowingly, they had already passed the border of the Great Zhou dynasty and were flying between the lofty mountains and jagged shoals of grotesque shapes. 3 to 4 days had passed. On this day the bats were flying in the vast sky as usual. There was a sudden gust of wind in front of them. The bats that Yun Sheng and Yun Songhai were riding on were only ordinary level 5 magic beasts. They could fly normally, but when faced with the gust of wind, the bats were immediately blown around. The gust of wind was very violent. It blew on their faces and caused them to feel pain. Yun Sheng could only control the bats and asked loudly, "Zhong Yi, what's going on?" "Master, this gust of wind is strange. It seems like someone set up a special wind magic formation in this area. If I'm not wrong, this place is very close to Grand Emperor City. However, it's not easy to control magic beasts in this area. I'm afraid you can't ride on magic beasts anymore." Zhong Yi looked at Yun Sheng worriedly. Grand Emperor City was a hidden city. Its location had been the biggest secret for thousands of years. Without the guidance of the people of Grand Emperor City, it was very difficult for ordinary people to find the exact location of Grand Emperor City. This gust of wind was obviously a natural barrier that Grand Emperor City used to block people from the outside world. Flying magic beasts could save a lot of energy. However, most of the magic beasts had large bodies. When they encountered strong winds, they would be easily swept away. In this kind of environment, it was easier to control the warrior's battle energy wings and the magician's magic wings. Zhong Yi was a sacred beast summoner and Yun Songlong was also a warrior sage. The two of them had already condensed wings. It was not difficult for them to fly through this gust of wind. Yun Sheng was only a master magician. Without magic beasts, she would not be able to pass through this gust of wind. "I see. It's not a problem. Second uncle, Zhong Yi, you guys go up first. I'll follow behind." After Yun Sheng said this, Zhong Yi immediately withdrew the Dragon Claw Bat King. Yun Songlong also immediately transformed his battle energy wings. Yun Sheng steadied the bat beneath her and immediately started chanting. A magical space appeared in front of Zhong Yi and Yun Songlong. Zhong Yi was still puzzled. He had always known that Yun Sheng was a summoner, but he had never known what Master Summoned Beast was. Thinking that she had a master on the level of Emperor Zhao, her summoned beast should not be bad. In the magical space, a round, pink egg appeared. What was that? Zhong Yi could not help but rub his eyes. That was an egg? And it was a flying egg with wings? Zhong Yi was even more dumbfounded. With a whoosh, the egg drilled into Yun Sheng's body. In just a short while, a pair of wings appeared on Yun Sheng's back. Those were real wings, not the illusory wings behind them. That's a fusion? Oh my god, Master, your summoned beast is actually an egg with the ability to fuse. Zhong Yi had obviously forgotten about the environment they were in. He pointed at the pair of wings behind Yun Sheng's back. He could not close his mouth. A magic beast that could fuse. This was a magic beast that only appeared in ancient summoning books. Regardless of what was inside the egg, one thing was certain. A magic beast that could fuse must meet 2 conditions. First, it must have a life contract with the summoner. Second, it must be a magic beast that was above the level of a divine beast. Zhong Yi was instantly in awe of Yun Sheng. Chapter 441. Without the magical beast as a mount, the 3 of them were less affected by the wind. The 3 of them quickly passed through the hurricane area. However, another problem appeared. The Zhong personality had followed the scent left behind by the little bat to find the whereabouts of the Great Elder and Yuan Shahua. However, after passing through the hurricane area, the little bat probably could not pass through the hurricane area. After passing through the hurricane area, he could not find any scent at all. Facing the boundless land with no end in sight, the 3 of them revealed a troubled expression. At this moment, Yun Sheng heard a cheerful chirping sound. Not far away, a red and blue little fella flew over. It was a little fella about the size of a sparrow. Its feathers were a strange color, half blue and half red. However, the strangest part was its head. It had two heads, just like Xiao Hei that Yunxing had seen before. One of its heads was red while the other was blue. Two-headed ice-fire luan. This is a mutated species of the Chongming bird. The Zong personality's eyes lit up when he saw the little red and blue bird. It was like a drunkard who saw good wine or a pervert who saw a beauty. Yunxing could also tell at a glance that although this magical beast was still a young bird, its attributes were very special. It was a rare dual attribute of water and fire. If one could have such a dual attribute magical beast, it would be a great help to any summoner. Although the Zong personality already had a dragon clawback king, such a sacred beast was still very tempting. The two-headed ice-fire luan was Yuan Bu Po's bird. It was ordered to search for Yun Songlong. Before Yuan Bu Po left, he secretly found a letter written by Yun Songlong that Yuan Xiaohua had left in her boudoir. The ice-fire luan relied on the scent left behind in the letter to find Yun Songlong. However, Yuan Bu Po forgot that although the two-headed ice-fire luan was a sacred beast, it had not been long since it was born. It was still ignorant of the outside world. After it flew out, it was confused for a while and actually got lost. When it finally reacted, it smelled the scent of living people. One of them was the scent of the person in the letter that its master had given it. It flew over happily. However, the Zhongyi's eyes were filled with greed, as if he was going to roast and eat the ice-fire luan at any moment. Little Honglan was so scared that she didn't dare to approach. Zhongyi, don't be greedy. Can't you see that the little guy has an owner? And it's someone else's life-bound magical beast. Yunxing laughed. It was only then that the Zong personality realized that the ice-fire luan had a very strong human aura. Don't scare it. It looks like it wants to tell us something. Yunxing noticed that little red blue had been flying around Yun Songlong non-stop. With a thought, Yunxing secretly circulated the divine power of the Linglong Beast Pagoda in the beast language ring. The exquisite beast tower was a supreme treasure in itself. Ordinary magical beasts would drool endlessly upon seeing it. Needless to say, little red blue was a baby bird at the level of a holy beast. As soon as it smelled the scent that made it feel comfortable, it immediately landed on Yunxing's shoulder intimately. It used its beak to gently peck Yunxing's ear in a fawning manner and let out a series of pleasant chirps. Yunxing's ears itched and she smiled. Little guy, quickly tell me who sent you here. If you answer well, you will be rewarded. Little red blue understood Yunxing's words. It opened its wings to please her. Yunxing took a closer look and realized that there was a letter under its wings. When she opened it, Yunxing's expression instantly became serious. Yun Songlong took the letter and looked at the date. His heart couldn't help but jump. The handwriting on the letter was very messy. It was written by Yuan Bupo in a hurry. It clearly stated that Yuan Xiaohua was banished from the Grand Emperor city because of Yun Songlong. For more than 8 years she wandered alone outside. For Yun Songlong, she was willing to be regarded as a traitor by the Grand Emperor city. A few days later she was executed to pay with her life for Xian Wuji. After reading the letter, Yun Songlong's heart was filled with pain. He didn't expect that Yuan Xiaohua had suffered such a great grievance. And for so many years he had been blaming her. Second uncle, don't be sad. The most important thing now is to immediately rush to the Grand Emperor city. The letter was written 6 days ago. Counting the days, isn't Aunt's execution day tomorrow? Yunxing was also anxious. They had wasted too much time on the way. If they didn't rush to the Grand Emperor city now, it would be too late. The three of them followed Little Red Blue and rushed to the Grand Emperor city. Early the next morning in the Grand Emperor city's dungeon, a group of Grand Emperor city soldiers walked in. Following them was Madame Bai. Yuan Xiaohua, whose heart was like dead water, didn't even raise her head. Yuan Xiaohua, change into these clothes. Madame Bai ordered her personal maid to bring over a set of clothes. When she saw the clothes, Yuan Xiaohua's originally expressionless face couldn't help but change. It was a set of wedding clothes. The fiery red color stung Yuan Xiaohua's eyes. What do you mean by this? Yuan Xiaohua coldly asked. What do you mean, Yuan Xiaohua? Today is the day my son is buried. It's also the day you're buried with him. When he was alive he always wanted to marry you. Unfortunately, you little slut, fooling around outside and shamelessly breaking off the engagement. Madame Bai's face was filled with ruthlessness. If you don't want to be the wife of the junior city lord, then today, I'll let you accompany Wuji on his way as a concubine, Madame Bai said through gritted teeth. Madame Bai wanted to humiliate Yuan Xiaohua so that she wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Madam Bai, don't you go too far. Even a clay figurine had a temper. If Yuan Xiaohua had felt some guilt towards Madam Bai for killing Shen Wuji, then that guilt had completely disappeared. Madam Bai wasn't just humiliating her, she was also humiliating the Yuan clan and Yun Songlong. Although Yuan Xiaohua and Yun Songlong hadn't done the deed of husband and wife, in her heart, Yun Songlong was her only husband. Just hearing Shen Wuji's name was enough to make her feel disgusted. So what if I'm forcing you? My son couldn't have you when he was alive, and now he wants you to accompany him in death. This should let him rest in peace. Do you think the Yuan clan's people will disobey me, the wife of the city lord, for a little slut who's about to die? Men, strip this slut of her clothes and change into her wedding clothes. Madam Bai ordered her subordinates as she held Yuan Xiaohua down. Poor Yuan Xiaohua had been locked up for several days without food or water. Her battle chi was also suppressed, so she couldn't struggle at all. She was humiliatingly stripped of her clothes and changed into her wedding clothes. Her eyes were filled with despair. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.